Close your eyes and imagine, just for a moment, that you are drifting above a valley at twilight. The air is cool, the mountains rise like protective arms around you, and below lies a shimmering lake that reflects the fading sun. Upon its waters, islands seem to float, green with fields, white with temples, dotted with houses where warm hearth smoke curls gently into the sky. This is the Valley of Mexico, centuries ago, and soon you will come to know it not through battles or conquests, but through the gentle rhythm of its daily life. And here comes a quiet twist, one you might not expect so soon. The Aztec Empire, which you may have heard spoken of in terms of war, sacrifice, and empire, was also a world of gardens, marketplaces, poetry, astronomy, and careful farming. The name itself, Aztec, was never what they called themselves. They knew their world as Mexica, children of the sun, keepers of the maize, dwellers in a land where every stone and every reed held memory. Doesn't that shift feel like a soft light changing the scene? Instead of fierce shadows, we'll walk together through warm courtyards, through bustling canals, through quiet temples at dawn. Stay with me, because in a moment you'll see how this empire was not only built on war, but on song, trade, craft, and the pulse of the earth itself. Picture the heart of their capital, Tenochtitlan, a city that rose out of water, like a vision from a dream. Broad causeways stretched across the lake, lined with people walking steadily, carrying baskets of maize, bundles of firewood, cages of turkeys. Canoes glided along canals, their oars dipping rhythmically, their hulls filled with fruits, flowers, and fish. Floating gardens, chinampas, spread outward like green rafts, each one a miracle of ingenuity, where maize, beans, squash, and flowers grew in fertile abundance. Life here was not only survival, it was abundance carefully tended, a harmony between water, earth, and human hands. Let's turn the lamp a little lower and step into an Aztec home. The walls are built of adobe, the roof thatched. In the center, a hearth glows faintly, the three stones holding the cooking fire symbolic of stability and the cosmic triangle. A woman grinds maize on a stone metate, the steady rhythm like a lullaby. The scent of warm tortillas fills the air, simple, comforting. Children chase each other quietly, laughter softened as night settles. The father repairs tools, humming under his breath. Outside, dogs curl in doorways, and the lake laps gently against the shore. Doesn't this feel already like a world you know? As familiar as family, as soothing as an evening spent by firelight? Stay with me, because the Aztec world was deeply layered. Beneath daily life was ritual, myth, and devotion. Every action carried meaning. Sweeping the floor, lighting a fire, planting a seed. Each was done not only for necessity, but as a gift of gods, a way of keeping balance in a cosmos that was alive, breathing, spiraling. The people believed that the sun needed to be nourished, that maize needed to be honored, that time itself required tending. To live in Tenochtitlan was to live in constant awareness of the sacred woven into the ordinary. And here is another gentle revelation. The city was filled with poetry and song. Noblemen and women composed verses about flowers, about the fleeting nature of life, about the beauty of friendship and love. In the evenings, after the work of the day, gatherings were held where people sang and recited, accompanied by the soft beat of drums and the rattle of shells. Even in an empire often remembered for its battles, the Aztecs cherished beauty, words, and music. Imagine drifting into sleep with poetry in your ears, lines like petals, carried by a voice gentle and calm. Picture the marketplace, Tlatelolco, alive with trade but never chaotic. Tens of thousands of people gathered there, exchanging goods with care and order. You would see cacao beans used as currency, bright feathers from distant lands, obsidian blades sharp as mirrors, woven cloth, gourds of honey, bundles of herbs. Each stall had its place, each item its price, each exchange overseen by calm officials. Voices filled the air, but not in a jarring way, more like a hum, like the buzzing of bees, steady and reassuring. Doesn't that sound like a marketplace where you might wander not in haste, but in wonder? Stay with me, because as you breathe slowly now, you'll see how the empire was held together not only by warriors, but by farmers, artisans, merchants, priests, and poets. Each played a role, each thread necessary in the weave. The canals carried goods, the chinampas grew food, the temples gave meaning. The schools taught children. The markets connected villages to the capital. It was a living system, a body in which every part mattered. And when you imagine it this way, it becomes not a tale of domination, but connection, rhythm, and care. Let's pause and listen to the night sounds of the valley. The soft lap of water against stone, the distant call of water birds, the croak of frogs and reeds, the hum of insects. Torches flicker along the causeways, their light mirrored in the lake. A canoe drifts slowly past, its passengers silent, or dipping in measured strokes. From a distant temple, a conch shell horn sounds, a low, lingering note that echoes across the waters. It is not alarming. It is steady, reassuring, like a call to breathe, to rest, to remember. And here's the reassurance. Though we may be far in time from the Aztec world, we can still walk its pathways in our imagination. The stories they told, the songs they sang, the food they ate, the prayers they whispered, these are not lost. They are still here, carried in memory, in descendants, in ruins that still stand under the sky. By listening gently tonight, you are part of that remembering, part of that same spiral. Isn't it comforting to know that history is never gone, only transformed, waiting for us to walk softly through it again? As you breathe slowly, imagine lying in a canoe on the waters of Lake Texcoco. The stars shimmer above, reflected in the surface. The city glows faintly at its center, torches and hearth fires twinkling like stars brought down to earth. You hear the dip of paddles, the murmur of voices, the distant music of drums. You feel safe, carried by the water, embraced by the valley, part of a story older than memory, yet as close as your own breath. In Chapter 1, we will begin at the beginning, not the empire itself, but the wandering people who became the Mexica. We will follow them as they journeyed into the Valley of Mexico, guided by vision and prophecy, seeking a place to call home. Stay with me, because their story begins not with conquest, but with longing, patience, and the gentle rhythm of migration beneath an endless sky. Let's begin at the beginning, not with a great city already standing, not with bustling markets or towering temples, but with a small group of people wandering beneath an endless sky. They were the Mexica, the people who would one day build Tenochtitlán, though at this early stage they were little more than families, carrying bundles on their backs, children in their arms, songs in their throats. They came from somewhere far to the north, a place they remembered in story and song, and they carried with them not only possessions but prophecy, a promise that the gods would show them where to settle. Stay with me, because in a moment you'll hear that prophecy in its most familiar form. They would find an eagle perched on a cactus, devouring a serpent. When they saw that sign, they would know the land was theirs, the place chosen for them by the divine. But before that moment came, there were long years of wandering. Picture them walking under the wide Mexican sky, stars brilliant above, the land stretching endlessly around them. At night they huddled by fires, sharing food and stories, reminding themselves of the vision that guided them. Imagine their camp at dusk. A ring of small fires burns low, pots of maize porridge bubbling quietly, the air filled with wood smoke and the scent of herbs. Children chase one another between the shadows, laughter softened by the night air. Elders sit together, speaking of the gods, recalling the stories of creation, reminding the younger ones why they travel. Dogs curl at the edge of the camp, ears twitching at sounds in the dark. And above them all, the stars turn slowly, reassuringly, their constellation steady, as if guiding the way. And here's a gentle twist. While the Mexica remembered themselves as chosen, many of the settled peoples of the Valley of Mexico saw them as outsiders, even as rough wanderers. When they first arrived, they were not powerful. They were humble, seeking allies, working as laborers, sometimes even as mercenaries. Their greatness was not given at once. It was grown slowly, like maize planted in rocky soil. Isn't it soothing to realize that even the most splendid cities began with small steps, with patience, with persistence? Stay with me, because their journey was filled with small rituals. Each time they stopped, they built altars of stone, offered copal incense, and prayed to Huitzilopochtli, their guiding god of the sun and war. He was the one who gave them the vision, the one they trusted to lead them. Before meals, before sleep, before setting out again, they gave thanks, asked protection, whispered devotion. Their faith carried them as surely as their feet, steady as breath. Picture them crossing rivers, their belongings carried on reed mats, the water cool and swift around their ankles. Picture them walking through field of maguey and cactus, the plants tall and spiny, their flowers glowing faintly in the sun. Picture them climbing hills to look out across valleys, the air thin and sharp, the horizon wide. Every step was part of the story, every mile a verse in the song of migration. And here is another revelation. As they traveled, they absorbed customs, words, and practices from the peoples they met. They learned new farming techniques, new foods, new rituals. They were not isolated but connected, weaving the threads of many cultures into their own. The empire they would later build was already seated here, in the borrowing, the learning, the adapting. To walk as a wanderer was not to be weak. It was to be open, receptive, resilient. Let's lower the lamp in our minds and imagine the Mexica at night again, resting after a long day's march. A priest tends a fire, sprinkling copal into the flames, the smoke curling upward. He chants softly, calling on Huitzilopochtli, asking for guidance. The people lie close together, wrapped in woven blankets, listening to his voice, drifting into dreams of eagles, of lakes, of cactus, of home. The night is cool, but the fire is warm, the prayer steady, the dream shared. Stay with me, because after years of wandering, the Mexica did at last reach the Valley of Mexico. It was a place of lakes, mountains, and fertile land. Around the waters were already great cities: Texcoco, Tlacopan, Azcapotzalco, each with its own rulers, markets, and temples. The Mexica entered as newcomers, strangers in a valley already full. They settled first in the marshy edges, building huts on small islands, fishing from canoes, growing maize where they could. Their prophecy was not yet fulfilled, but the spiral was turning closer. And here's a reassurance. Though they were newcomers, the Mexica's persistence carried them forward. They worked for other city-states, sometimes farming, sometimes fighting as allies in wars. Their skills grew, their reputation spread, and slowly they found footing. Each year, they built more chinampas, more fields of floating gardens. Each season they grew stronger, steadier, more certain that the gods had indeed chosen them. Picture them finally seeing the sign. One day, as the story tells, they came upon an eagle perched on a prickly pear cactus, wings spread wide, sunlight shining on its feathers, a serpent clutched in its beak. It was the vision foretold, the confirmation of prophecy. They rejoiced, they built an altar, they gave thanks. Here, on a small marshy island in Lake Texcoco, they would build their city. Tenochtitlán was born not from conquest, but from wonder, from faith, from the quiet patience of wanderers who had walked far and waited long. Stay with me, because the founding of Tenochtitlan was as humble as it was grand. At first, it was only a cluster of huts, reed mats laid on damp ground, fires built on stones. But each day they expanded, laying wooden stakes into mud, piling earth to create firmer ground, building canals, shaping chinampas. Each act was small, yet together they transformed marsh into city. Isn't it calming to think of greatness built slowly, not rushed, each step another breath, another layer of care? And here's the comfort. The Mexica believed they had been guided, that their hardships were not wasted, that their waiting had meaning. Their migration became not just history but myth, a story told and retold. A reminder that even when beginnings are uncertain, faith and persistence can lead to flourishing. They held on to that memory even as their city grew into an empire, even as their power spread across the valley. They remembered that once, they were wanderers beneath the stars. As you breathe slowly now, imagine yourself in a canoe on Lake Texcoco during those first years. The water ripples softly. The air smells of wet earth and reeds. Around you, small huts rise from the marsh. Fires glow faintly. Voices murmur. You see people planting young maize on chinampas, guiding canoes, tending fires. You feel the quiet determination in the air, the sense of belonging finally found. You are part of the beginning, part of the story, safe in its unfolding. In Chapter 2, we will step further into the growth of Tenochtitlan, from humble huts on marshy islands to a city of canals, plazas, and temples. Stay with me, because the next turn of the spiral will show how ingenuity and devotion transformed water into stone, dream into reality, until the city itself seemed to float like a vision upon the lake. Now that the Mexic had found their sign, an eagle on a cactus, its wings wide in sunlight, they began the slow, tender work of turning prophecy into place. Stay with me, because what began as a marshy island in the middle of Lake Texcoco will become one of the greatest cities the world had ever seen, though at first it was fragile, damp, and precarious. Imagine it. Huts built from reeds, smoke rising into the open air, earth piled into the shallows to keep water at bay. The beginnings were humble, yet the dream was steady. Picture the island in those early days. The lake surrounded it on all sides, shimmering in the morning light. Reeds grew thick along its edges, and herons stepped carefully through the shallows, hunting fish. Canoes glided across the water, carrying men and women gathering rushes, netting fish, or bringing firewood from the distant shores. At night, the fires flickered softly, and the sound of waves lapping against the muddy banks sang lullabies to the children. The city was not yet stone and grandeur, but was already alive with warmth, rhythm, and promise. Stay with me, because the Mexico were ingenious. To live on water, they needed land, and so they built it. They drove wooden stakes deep into the lake bed, weaving branches between them, filling the spaces with mud and reeds. These floating gardens, called chinampas, were anchored to the earth below, rich with silt that nourished crops. Upon them grew maize, beans, squash, and flowers, bright marigolds, fragrant herbs, the sustenance of daily life. The chinampas spread like green rafts across the waters, each one a small miracle of patience and care. Imagine walking along a narrow path between chinampas. The earth is damp under your sandals. The water glitters on either side. Rows of maize rise tall. Beans twine around their stalks. Squash vines spread wide at your feet. Flowers bloom in corners, their colors vivid against the green. Farmers bend to their work, hands steady, eyes calm. Children paddle canoes filled with fresh vegetables, their laughter carrying across the water. The scene is peaceful, abundant, a balance of human effort and nature's generosity. And here is a gentle twist. While Tenochtitlán grew, it was not at first a city of dominance. The Mexica lived under the shadow of stronger neighbors, especially the Tepanecs of Azcapotzalco. They paid tribute. They served as warriors. They endured humility. Yet through this, they grew in strength, learning diplomacy, practicing resilience, watching carefully. They did not leap suddenly to power. They unfolded slowly, like the opening of a flower at dawn. Isn't it comforting to think that growth can be steady, gradual, and still transform everything in time? Let's turn the lamp a little lower and imagine the city's early markets. Small at first, set in open courtyards, where families traded baskets of maize for gourd honey, fish for obsidian tools, clay pots for woven cloth. The voices of sellers were gentle, calling out their goods. Buyers examined carefully, smiled, exchanged cacao beans or cotton cloth in payment. There was order even then, a quiet system that made exchange feel less like chaos and more like harmony. Stay with me, because the city was also being shaped spiritually. At the center of the growing settlement, altars were built to Huitzilopochtli, the guiding sun god, and to Tlaloc, the giver of rain. Each morning, smoke rose from small shrines, prayers whispered into the sky. Rituals were simple but steady, offerings of maize, flowers, copal resin. Each act reminded the people that the city was not theirs alone, but a gift, a trust, a responsibility. Picture a dawn ceremony. The lake is still, the first rays of sunlight touching the water. A priest, dressed in cotton, climbs the small altar steps. He scatters flower petals, burns incense, and lifts his voice in song. The people kneel quietly, their faces calm, their breaths slow. The scent of copal drifts upward, mingling with the mist. It is not grand spectacle, but gentle devotion, a reminder that their city was being built both in stone and in spirit. And here is another revelation. Water was not a barrier, but a blessing. The canals that crisscrossed the island became the city's lifeblood. Canoes carried food, wood, and people swiftly, their paddles moving in steady rhythm. Families used the canals like streets, visiting neighbors, reaching markets, traveling the fields. The water mirrored the sky, reflecting temples and homes alike, making the city seem to float in the heavens. Tenochtitlan was not just built on water. It was built with water, shaped into harmony with it. Let's pause and imagine an evening in those early years. The sun has set, and the lake glows faintly with starlight. Fires flicker on the chinampas, their smoke rising in thin streams. Families gather in their homes, hammocks swinging, voices low. In the distance, the sound of drums echoes faintly, a ritual continuing at the central altar. Canoes glide silently across the dark water, their passengers guided by torchlight. The air is cool, the city calm, the people safe in their rhythm. Stay close, because growth came quickly. Within a few generations, the Mexica built stone temples, palaces, and causeways that linked the island to the mainland. 3 great causeways stretched across the lake, wide enough for many to walk side by side. Aqueducts carried fresh water from springs in the surrounding hills. Bridges could be raised to allow canoes to pass. The city became not only sustainable but magnificent, a place where ingenuity transformed challenges into beauty. And here's a reassurance. Tenochtitlan's rise was not magic, not sudden, but the result of countless small acts. A farmer planting seeds, a mason laying stone, a child learning prayers, a canoe paddled across water. Each act, ordinary in itself, wove together into something extraordinary. Isn't it soothing to think that greatness is built from small, steady steps, just like breaths, just like heartbeats? Let's dim the lamp further and picture the city as it began to blossom. The main plaza took shape, vast and open, surrounded by temples and palaces. The Templo Mayor, the great twin pyramid, rose at the center, its steps steep, its summit crowned with shrines. Around it stretched markets, schools, and council halls. The hum of voices filled the air, mingled with the scent of flowers, maize, and incense. The city glowed like a jewel set upon the lake, alive with color, sound, and devotion. Stay with me, because the people never forgot their beginnings. They told and retold the story of the eagle on the cactus, of the wanderers who became builders, of the marsh turned into miracle. Each festival, each ceremony, each song carried memory. Their city was not only stone and water. It was story embodied, prophecy fulfilled, dream transformed into reality. As you breathe slowly now, imagine walking through Tenochtitlan's early streets. The causeway beneath your feet is smooth. The canal beside you ripples softly. A canoe passes, its passenger greeting you with a nod. Children run past, laughing, carrying baskets of flowers. You hear the soft hum of voices from a marketplace, the gentle beat of drums from a temple, the murmur of prayer from a home altar. You feel safe, connected, part of something unfolding beautifully around you. In Chapter 3, we will step further into the lives of the people who filled this city. Farmers, artisans, merchants, children. Stay with me, because the next turn of the spiral will carry us into the heart of daily life. The great temples rose high, and the causeways stretched across the lake, but the true heartbeat of Tenochtitlan pulsed in the daily lives of its people. Stay with me, because here we will not hear battles or kings alone, but hearts glowing at dawn, children learning songs at school, farmers bending to their chinampas, and artisans shaping beauty with their hands. Life in this floating city was not only ritual and rule. It was laughter, labor, devotion, and rhythm, a pattern as steady as your own breath. Picture a home along a canal. Its walls are made of adobe, plastered smooth, its roof thatched with reeds. Inside, the space is simple but warm. In the center lies a hearth. 3 stones cradling the fire, a pot of maize porridge simmering slowly. The air smells of wood smoke and fresh tortillas, their scent wrapping around you like a blanket. A woman kneels at the metate, grinding maize with steady strokes, her rhythm soft, hypnotic. Children sit close by, shaping dough into small rounds, their giggles quiet in the glow of the firelight. Stay close, because food was central to life, both nourishment and symbol. Maize was sacred, the very flesh of humanity, ground daily into masa for tortillas and tamales. Beans and squash joined it, a trinity of sustenance. Chili peppers added flavor, while tomatoes, cacao, and amaranth gave variety. In the markets, you would see turkeys, ducks, fish in the lake, and even small dogs raised for meat. But more often than not, Meals were simple: tortillas warm from the griddle, beans seasoned with herbs, perhaps a slice of avocado, perhaps a cup of chocolate drink whipped frothy. Imagine sitting by the hearth, a tortilla in your hand, the taste familiar and comforting, the same as it was for generations before. And here's a gentle twist. Chocolate, which you may think of as a sweet treat, was in a bitter, spiced drink often flavored with chili or honey, reserved for nobles, warriors, and merchants. It was valued so highly that cacao beans were used as money in the marketplace. A handful of beans might buy a cloak, a few more canoes worth of fish. Yet even as currency, it remained a drink of ceremony, savored slowly, shared in moment of connection. Isn't it soothing to think of a beverage as both wealth and comfort, as simple as a cup cradled in hands? Let's turn the lamp a little lower and wander into a school. All children, boys and girls alike, were educated, though in different ways. Boys of noble families attended the Kalmakak, where they learned ritual, astronomy, poetry, and leadership. Commoner boys studied at the Telpakali, where discipline, farming, crafts, and military skills were taught. Girls, too, were instructed, often at home, in weaving, cooking, and the sacred tasks of tending the hearth and raising children. Education was not only knowledge but rhythm, shaping minds and hearts into harmony with the cosmos. Picture a classroom in the Kalmakak. A priest in simple cotton speaks softly, pointing to glyphs painted on bark paper. The students sit cross-legged, listening, their eyes following his gestures. Outside, the sounds of the city drift in, the splash of paddles, the murmur of markets, the distant beat of drums. The lesson is not hurried, not loud. It is steady, unfolding like a chant, teaching not only facts but patience, reverence, and belonging. Stay with me, because artisans filled the city with beauty. Weavers sat at looms, their hands flying across threads of cotton dyed in deep blues, reds, and yellows. Jewelers shaped jade and obsidian into necklaces and ear spools, their surfaces gleaming in torchlight. Potters molded clay into bowls, cups, and figurines, painting them with patterns of flowers, birds, and gods. Feather workers created headdresses and cloaks from shimmering quetzal plumes, iridescent and delicate. Each craft was an offering, each object a prayer made visible. Imagine walking through an artisan's workshop. The floor is scattered with feathers, bright as jewels, each one laid carefully into a cloak that will shimmer like sunlight on water. In another corner, a potter shapes clay on a low stool, his hands wet, the vessel smooth under his touch. A child sits beside him, watching intently, learning by seeing. The room smells of earth, dye, and smoke, the air filled with quiet concentration. Nothing here is rushed. Each act is careful, steady, infused with meaning. And here is another revelation. Markets were the heartbeat of community. Every 5 days, the great marketplace of Tlatelolco drew tens of thousands. Rows of stalls were arranged in order, sellers grouped by craft. Farmers here, hunters there, artisans further on. Judges kept order, ensuring fairness. The hum of voices rose, but never harshly, more like a hive of bees, each sound blending into a steady chorus. Shoppers moved slowly, pausing to inspect woven cloaks, to taste a bit of honey, to count cacao beans carefully. It was not simply trade. It was gathering, social rhythm, affirmation, connection. Let's pause and imagine standing in that marketplace. The sun is high, the stalls shaded by cloth awnings. The air is filled with scents, fresh tortillas, roasting chili sweet cacao. Bright feathers shimmer in the breeze. Piles of maize glisten golden. Clay vessels gleam in the light. Children dart between stalls, their laughter weaving to the hum of voices. You stand still, breathing deeply, letting the abundance surround you, not in chaos but in harmony, as reassuring as the steady flow of a river. Stay with me, because religion touched every part of daily life. Each morning, before work, families offered kernels of maize or drops of water at household altars. Each evening, before meals, they whispered thanks to the gods. Festivals punctuated the year, each tied to planting, harvest, or celestial events. The great ceremonies in temples may have been led by priests, but the essence of ritual was in the small gestures repeated daily in every home. Isn't it calming to think of devotion as woven into ordinary acts, as natural as breathing, And here's the reassurance. Though the empire grew powerful, the lives of most people were steady and grounded. They rose with the sun, tended fields or crafts, shared meals with family, told stories at night. Their children played, their dogs barked, their fires glowed. The grand narratives of empire rested on these simple foundations. In every tortilla pressed, every cloak woven, every chinampa tended, the empire was sustained. Let's dim the lamp further and imagine a night in a commoner's home. The fire glows low. The air smells faintly of maize and wood smoke. Parents rest in woven mats. Children curl together, their breathing soft. Outside, the lake ripples under starlight. Frogs croak gently in the reeds. From a distance, a conch shell horn sounds, marking a ritual in the central plaza. But here in this small house, all is calm, safe, ordinary. Life continues, steady as the stars above. Stay with me, because to understand the Aztec Empire is to see both the grandeur and the ordinary. The temples and causeways impress us, but the daily rhythm gives them meaning. Without the farmers, the artisans, the children, the markets, the songs, the empire would be empty. With them, it was alive, pulsing, human. Isn't it soothing to know that even in the greatest empires, the heart is always the same? Family, food, song, rest. As you breathe slowly now, imagine yourself lying in a hammock in a courtyard in Tenochtitlán. The stars wheel above, the embers glow nearby. The soft sound of water drifts in from the canal. When you look at Tenochtitlán in your mind's eye, you may first see the canals, the chinampas, the bustling markets, the families gathered at hearths. But rising above it all, steady and unmistakable, were the temples. They were not only stone, they were symbols, reminders that the city lived in relationship with the cosmos. Stay with me, because here, in these sacred spaces, the people of the Mexica sought balance, assurance, and connection with the divine. Picture the main plaza at dawn. The air is cool. The lake mist clings faintly to the edges of the city. Slowly, people gather, their sandals whispering on stone. Traders, artisans, priests, children, all come together. In the center, the Templo Mayor rises, twin stairways climbing steeply toward shrines at the top. One shrine belongs to Huitzilopochtli, the sun and the guiding warrior. The other belongs to Tlaloc, the giver of rain and fertility. Together, they represent balance, fire and water, sun and rain, life sustained through duality. Stay with me, because rituals here were not harsh interruptions to daily life, but continuations of rhythm. Every cycle of planting and harvest, every turn of the sun and moon was marked with ceremony. Some rituals were grand, filling the plaza with sound and incense. Others were quiet, performed in homes with kernels of maize or drops of water. Always, the intention was balance, a reassurance that the world would continue, that the sun would rise again tomorrow, that rain would fall to nourish the chinampas, that people would eat and live and sing. Imagine incense rising into the morning sky. Copal resin smolders in clay vessels, its smoke sweet and thick, curling upward like prayer made visible. The smell is warm, earthy, calming. Drums beat softly, steady as a heartbeat. Conch shell trumpets call out, their sound low and resonant, like waves moving across the lake. Voices join in chant, not hurried, not loud, but deep, measured, flowing. The people kneel, bow their heads, breathe deeply. The ceremony wraps them in rhythm, reminding them that they belong to something greater. And here's a gentle twist. Though temples might seem to us like distant, lofty places, for the Mexica, they were woven into everyday life. The plaza was not separate from the marketplace, nor the rituals from the rhythm of the city. People came and went freely, mixing errands with devotion, trade with prayer. A farmer selling maize might pause to leave an offering. A child on the way to school might linger at the base of the pyramid. Spiritual life was not apart from daily life. It was its steady undercurrent. Isn't it comforting to think of the sacred not as unreachable, but as something present in every ordinary step? Let's lower the lamp in our minds and walk inside a Kalmakak, where priests in training learned the chants, the rituals, the calendar. They studied the stars, marking the cycles of Venus and the phases of the moon. They memorized long hymns, practiced the careful motions of ceremonies, tended the sacred fires that burned continuously. Their lives were disciplined but not harsh. They were steady, like the turning of the seasons. Each act they learned was a reminder of continuity, of the cosmic cycles they sought to sustain. Stay close, because the Aztec calendar was itself a kind of temple in time. It was not one calendar, but two. The Tenochtitlán, a sacred cycle of 260 days, and the Aztec, a solar cycle of 365 days. Together they wove a tapestry of meaning, guiding when to plant, when to harvest, when to celebrate, when to rest. Priests read these calendars like books, aligning rituals with the dance of stars and sun. Imagine the reassurance of such order. Every day had meaning, every action a place in the cosmic weave. Picture a festival in full bloom. The plaza fills with dancers in bright feathers, their movements slow and graceful, echoing the flight of birds. Musicians beat drums, rattles shake gently, flutes sing softly. The air is thick with incense and the scent of flowers strewn across the ground. People wear garlands of marigolds, their golden petals glowing in the light. Children laugh, running between groups, carrying small offerings. Nobles and commoners alike share food, cacao, and song. It is not chaos but harmony, the city breathing as one body. And here is another revelation. While some ceremonies are remembered for their grandeur, much of ritual is gentle, personal, and deeply human. A mother teaching her child to sprinkle water on the earth before planting. A father leaving flowers at a household shrine before a journey. A priest softly chanting prayers over a newborn. These were acts of connection, not spectacle. They carried the same purpose as the great festivals, to keep the world in balance, to keep the people steady, to keep life unfolding. Let's pause and imagine the quiet of a night ritual. The stars wheel overhead, brilliant in the dark sky. A priest stands alone on the temple steps, his torch flickering in the wind. He raises his voice in chant, the sound carrying softly across the sleeping city. Few are awake to hear, but that does not matter. The song is not for human ears alone. The city itself seems to breathe with him, its canals glimmering with starlight, its homes glowing faintly with banked fires. The ritual is not about audience. It is about assurance, about tending the bond between earth and sky. Stay with me, because music was a thread that tied rituals together. The drum called the Huehuetl beat slowly, resonant and deep, like the earth's pulse. The hand drum called the Teponazli added gentle rhythm, its hollow body singing when struck. Shell trumpets moan like wind, while flutes carved from bone and with added melodies soft and sweet. Together, they wove a soundscape that was not loud but immersive, surrounding all who listened in calm assurance. And here's the reassurance. Even rituals that might seem solemn or mysterious were, for the people, sources of comfort. To wake at dawn and hear the drums was not frightening, but familiar, like hearing the town bell or the call of birds. To see incense rising was not strange but steadying, a sign that the world was being tended, that the bonds between humans and gods were cared for. Rituals reminded everyone that life continued, that tomorrow would come, that balance was being held. Let's dim the lamp further and picture a family at home after a day of ceremony. They return from the plaza with garlands of flowers and bits of food shared with neighbors. They sit around the hearth, eating tortillas warm from the griddle, beans seasoned with herbs. They talk softly, their voices weaving to the glow of the fire. Outside, the city settles into night. The rituals are complete, the balance tended. They feel calm, assured, safe. Stay with me, because the temples of Tenochtitlan were not only for gods, they were for people, too. They provided rhythm, meaning, community. They offered places of gathering, of song, of reassurance. Without them, the city would have been only stone and water. With them, it became alive, connected to the cosmos, infused with purpose. Isn't it soothing to think of structures not only as walls and stairs, but as vessels for meaning, as anchors for the spirit? As you breathe slowly now, imagine yourself sitting at the edge of the plaza at sunset. The Templo Mayor rises before you, glowing golden in the last light. Incense drifts upward, drums sound faintly, voices chant in harmony. Around you, families linger, children play, merchants close their stalls. If temples were the city's heart, and Chinampas its stomach, then merchants were its veins, carrying lifeblood outward and returning with treasures that nourish the empire. Stay with me, because in this chapter we will follow the Paktika, the traveling merchant of Tenochtitlan, whose journeys took them across mountains, deserts, forests, and coasts. They were not warriors, though they carried obsidian blades for safety. They were not priests, though they honored the gods in their own ways. They were quiet travelers, trusted to bring the faraway near. Picture a merchant at dawn, preparing for a journey. His pack is large, made of woven reeds and leather straps, resting against his back like a shell. Inside are cacao beans, cloaks, obsidian blades, and trinkets, goods of trade along the way. His sandals are sturdy, his cotton cloak tied securely, a small gourd of water slung at his side. His family gathers to see him off. His wife offers him a pack of tamales wrapped in maize leaves. His children clutch his legs, wishing him safe travels. He kneels briefly at a household shrine, offering a pinch of copal incense, then steps into the growing light. Stay close, because the Paktika were more than traders. They were carriers of stories, of news, of language. When they returned, they brought not only goods but knowledge of distant lands, of rulers, of customs. In a world without written letters carried in bags, the merchants themselves were messages, their memory a kind of living archive, their journeys stitched together the wide fabric of the empire. Imagine them on the road. A group of merchants moves along a mountain path, their breath visible in the cold morning air. The trail is narrow, edged by cliffs, but their steps are steady. Below them, clouds drift through valleys, hiding villages and fields. Above them, the sun begins to rise, painting the peaks gold. They walk in silence much of the time, their loads heavy, their minds steady. Every so often they pause, setting down their packs, drinking water, chewing on roasted maize kernels. Then, refreshed, they continue onward. And here is a gentle twist. Though the merchants were commoners by birth, they held a unique and honored place in Aztec society. Their journeys were dangerous, requiring courage, resourcefulness, and secrecy. They traveled far beyond the valley, sometimes into hostile territories, always carrying the weight of their community's trust. Their success meant prosperity for their families, and often for the city itself. Though not nobles, they moved in a space of respect, value for their skill and reliability. Isn't it soothing to know that respect was not only given by birth, but also earned through steady, careful work? Let's pause in a coastal town, reached after weeks of travel. The air here smells of salt and flowers, warm and heavy. Palm trees sway, and the sound of waves lingers in the background. The merchants spread their goods before local traders. Cacao beans piled neatly, obsidian blades gleaming in the light, woven cloaks folded with care. In return, they examined baskets of seashells, bundles of cotton, and perhaps even brilliant feathers from tropical birds. The exchange is careful, measured, accompanied by quiet conversation, smiles, and nods. It is not hurried but patient, like everything in the rhythm of the Mexico world. Stay with me, because the Paktika did not travel alone. They moved in groups, both for safety and for companionship. Together they built small camps by the roadside at night, lighting fires, cooking simple meals, sharing stories. The firelight flickered on their faces. Their shadows danced on the ground. Their laughter rose softly into the air. Around them, the forest hummed with insects, owls called from branches. The stars wheeled overhead. To be a merchant was to know solitude and togetherness, both in balance. Picture one such night. The merchants sit around a fire, unwrapping tamales from maize leaves, biting into their soft, warm centers. One pulls out a flute and plays a slow, gentle tune. Another mends a strap on his pack, his hands steady in the glow. Their talk is unhurried, touching on families at home, on the markets ahead, on memories of journeys past. Slowly, one by one, they lie back, resting their heads on folded cloaks, gazing at the stars until sleep takes them. The fire burns low, the forest keeps its rhythm, and the merchants dream of lake waters and home. And here is another revelation. The Paktika also served as spies for the empire. Their journeys into foreign lands allowed them to gather information quietly, reporting back on rulers, armies, and resources. This was not done with harshness, but with observation, with careful listening. Their eyes and ears widen the empire's understanding, allowing rulers to plan alliances and campaigns. The merchant's gift was not only in goods, but in wisdom, drawn from far away. Let's turn the lamp a little lower and imagine their return. After weeks or months away, the merchants arrive at Tenochtitlán. Canoes carry them across the final stretch of lake, their packs full of treasures. Families wait at the causeways, watching eagerly, waving when they spot familiar faces. Children run forward, shouting with joy. The merchants step onto the stone paths, weary but proud, their goods soon to be spread in the great marketplace. The city hums with anticipation, ready to welcome not just objects but stories, scents, and colors from the distant world. Stay with me, because the marketplace of Tlatelolco was where their journeys ended and began again. Here, goods from across Mesoamerica mingled. Bright tropical feathers lay beside obsidian knives. Vanilla pods scented the air near baskets of maize. Cotton cloaks of every hue rippled like water in the breeze. Merchants told stories of the coast, of mountains, of far-off cities with their own temples and gods. Their voices carried news. Their eyes carried memory. Their presence carried connection. And here's a reassurance. The Paktika remind us that empires are not sustained by force alone, but by exchange, by trust, by movement. Their journeys brought not only wealth but stability, knitting together regions through ties of trade and familiarity. Isn't it calming to think that even across mountains and deserts, people carried not only goods but bonds, weaving together the human family? Let's dim the lamp further and imagine one merchant at home after returning. He sits in his courtyard, his pack finally set aside. His wife prepares a meal. His children gather around, listening as he speaks softly of the coast, of the forest, of markets full of colors they have never seen. He hands his son a shell from the sea, its surface smooth and shining, a piece of the ocean now part of their hearth. He smiles, tired but peaceful, grateful to be home, grateful to have carried the far away back to near. Stay with me, because through the Paktika we glimpse the quiet arteries of the empire. They were not kings, not warriors, not priests. They were ordinary men who walked extraordinary distances, who carried the threads that held the tapestry together. Their stories remind us that history is not only temples and battles, but footsteps, campfires, and exchanges made with patience and care. As you breathe slowly now, imagine yourself as one of them, sitting by a fire at the edge of the forest, the stars above brilliant, the night calm. Your pack rests beside you, full of goods to trade. The fire warms your face. The earth steadies your body. The rhythm of your heart matches the slow beat of the drum why. If the markets were alive with trade and the temples pulsed with ritual, then the palaces and councils of Tenochtitlan were the spaces where decisions took shape, where voices gathered to guide the city's future. Stay with me, because in this chapter we will walk not through the bustling stalls or the chinampas, but through quiet halls of authority, where rulers listened as much as they commanded, and where power was woven gently into the life of the people. Picture a palace courtyard in the early morning. The sun filters through carved wooden beams, casting long shadows across polished stone floors. Birds sing from gardens within the walls, their feathers bright against the green leaves. Fountains trickle softly, their water cool and clear, echoing lightly off stone. Courtiers move quietly through the halls, carrying scrolls of painted bark paper, basket of food, or cloaks for their lords. The air is calm, measured, steady. The palace is not a place of frenzy, but of rhythm. Stay close, because the Mexico rulers, known as Tenochtitlan, literally the speaker, did not act alone. Their voices were guided by councils of nobles, priests, and elders. To be Tenochtitlan was not simply command, but to embody balance, to give voice to the city's needs, to listen to the whispers of gods and the hum of markets alike. Decisions about tribute, war, alliance, or ritual were not taken lightly. They were weighed like kernels of maize, each one considered, each one part of the whole. Imagine entering a council chamber. The walls are painted with glyphs, recording past deeds, victories, and lineages. Mats are laid neatly in a circle, where nobles and priests sit cross-legged. At the center, incense burns faintly, its smoke curling upward. The Tenochtitlan listens as advisors speak one by one. Their voice is soft, deliberate. No one rushes. Silence is respected. Pauses are honored. The rhythm is not argument, but a balance. Each voice like a drumbeat, steady, measured, woven into the larger song. And here is a gentle twist. The Tenochtitlan was powerful, yes, but he was never absolute. He was chosen by a council of electors from among the nobility, his role more duty than privilege. He lived in splendor, yet bound himself to the responsibilities of the city. He was expected to lead in war, to uphold rituals, to ensure food supplies, to tend the empire's relationships. His crown was not merely feather and gold. It was weight, responsibility, a constant call to steadiness. Isn't it calming to know that even at the highest level, leadership was framed as service, as listening, as holding balance? Let's lower the lamp in our minds and wander deeper into the palace. Kitchens hum with activity. Women grinding maize, servants carrying steaming pots, cooks preparing meals for hundreds. The air smells of roasting chilies and fresh tortillas, mingling with the scent of flowers from nearby gardens. In another wing, artisans craft fine cloaks and adornments, weaving cotton-dyed in brilliant colors, shaping turquoise and jade into jewelry. The palace is not only halls of decision, but also a living space, a place where beauty, sustenance, and daily rhythm sustain those who guide the city. Stay with me, because beyond the palace walls stretch the altepetl, the city-state itself, organized into kalpuli or neighborhoods. Each kalpuli had its own leaders, its own council, its own communal lands. Power was not held in one hand, but shared in layers, like ripples spreading outward across the lake. The Tenochtitlan stood at the center, but authority touched every household, every chinampa, every hearth. The empire's strength lay in this weave, this balance of center and edge. Picture an audience with the Tenochtitlan. A group of merchants enters, bearing tribute from distant lands. Bundles of cacao, cotton cloaks, bright feathers. They bow, laying the goods before him, their eyes lowered. The ruler listens to their words, nods, and responds with measured kindness. He does not shout, he does not hurry. His voice is steady, like water flowing, like the sun rising. Around him, scribes record the gifts, ensuring that nothing is forgotten, that every thread is woven into the fabric of the city. And here is another revelation. The Tenochtitlan did not live in isolation. He was surrounded by advisors, generals, priests, and stewards. His decisions were the product of dialogue, of listening. The palace was a hub of voices, not a throne of silence. To lead was to be attuned, to the harvest, to the markets, to the will of the gods, to the murmurs of the people. In this way, the palace mirrored the city itself, full of voices, each one part of the whole harmony. Let's pause and imagine Moctezuma I, one of the great rulers, walking through the gardens of his palace. He wears a cloak of turquoise-dyed cotton, embroidered with feathers that shimmer in the sun. His steps are slow, measured, his eyes resting on flowers and fountains, on birds in bright cages. Servants move quietly nearby, carrying baskets of fruit, bowls of chocolate. Yet even here, in the seeming leisure of the garden, his mind turns to duty, how to feed his people, how to honor the gods, how to keep the empire in balance. Stay close, because the palaces were not only centers of politics, but also of learning. Scribes painted codices on deerskin and bark paper, recording history, lineage, tribute, and law. They used glyphs and images, bright colors, and careful lines. To preserve memory, these codices were consulted in councils, teaching rulers and advisors the lessons of the past. Imagine turning their pages by lamplight, the images glowing softly, the voices of ancestors whispering through painted lines. And here's a reassurance. Though the empire expanded, though rulers commanded armies and tributes, their power always returned to rhythm, the rhythm of council, of calendar, of ritual. Authority was not noise but harmony, not chaos but order. Isn't it soothing to think of leadership as a circle of voices, as a steady dialogue, as a balance of duties shared? Let's dim the lamp further and picture the palace at night. The council chambers are quiet, the mats rolled away, the incense extinguished. The halls glow faintly with torchlight, shadows long against the walls. Servants rest in side rooms. Guards keep watch at the gates. In the gardens, the fountains still trickle, their sound soft, calming. The ruler sits alone in a courtyard, gazing at the stars, listening to the night. Even at the height of power, He is still one man, still small beneath the vast sky, still bound by the same rhythms as his people. Stay with me, because the councils of Tenochtitlan remind us that empires are not only built by stone and sword, but by words, by listening, by trust. The Teotihuacan held the title of speaker, not commander, and his greatest tool was his voice, steady, calm, measured. Through his words, the city found its direction, its confidence, its assurance. Through dialogue, power became not noise but harmony. As you breathe slowly now, imagine yourself sitting on a woven mat in the council chamber. The air smells of copal. The floor is cool beneath you. The voices around you speak with calm assurance. You feel included, not excluded, part of the dialogue, part of the rhythm. Outside, the city rests under starlight, its canals glimmering, its people safe in their homes. The decisions made here will ripple outward, touching every life. But in this moment, all is calm, all is steady, all is well. When you think of empire, you might first picture soldiers or kings, stone temples, or bustling markets. But stay with me, because in Tenochtitlan, just as vital as fields and palaces were the schools, the poetry, and the music. Here, children learned their duties, priests memorized the cycles of stars, and singers gave voice to the beauty and mystery of life. The Aztec Empire was not only power, it was wisdom, words, song, and rhythm. Picture dawn in the city. Mist drifts low across the lake, the first rays of sunlight warming the walls of temples and homes. Children stir from their mats, stretching, their mothers smoothing their hair, handing them small bundles of food. Some walk toward the Tenochtitlan, the neighborhood schools for commoners, where they will be taught discipline, farming, crafts, and military skills. Others head toward the Kalmakak, the schools for noble children, where priests and teachers will guide them in astronomy, ritual, history, and the art of speaking well. Their sandals patter softly on the stone paths, their voices low, their eyes wide with anticipation. Stay with me, because in these schools knowledge was not rushed, not cluttered. Lessons were steady, rhythmic, like the slow beat of a drum. At the Tenochtitlan, boys learned to carry wood, to paddle canoes, to tend chinampas. They practiced endurance by hauling loads, patience by keeping silent during exercises, discipline by rising at dawn. At the Kalmakak, noble students studied the sacred calendar, learned to recite hymns and practice speeches. Girls, too, were instructed, often at home, in weaving, cooking, midwifery, and the sacred tending of the hearth. Education was not optional. It was a steady foundation of community. Imagine one of these lessons. A priest sits cross-legged on a mat, a codex open before him. Bright glyphs and painted figures fill the pages, telling stories of gods and ancestors. Around him, students sit silently, their hands folded, their eyes fixed on images. The priest speaks slowly, his voice calm, measured. He explains how the sun must be honored, how maize must be planted with care, how every action must harmonize with the cycles of time. The children listen, breathing quietly, the room filled with reverence. And here's a gentle twist. Education in Tenochtitlan was not only about survival or obedience. It was also about beauty, about poetry, about song. The Mexica believed that the gods had given humans the gift of words and music to reach toward truth. They spoke of Xochitl and Quetzalcoatl, flower and song, as the highest expression of wisdom. To compose poetry, to sing of fleeting life and eternal sky, was to touch the divine. Isn't it common to think of learning not only as duty, but as beauty, not only as fact, but as flowering? Let's lower the lamp in our minds and wander into a gathering of poets. They sit in a courtyard at night, the stars wheeling overhead, a fire glowing softly between them. One begins to sing, his voice low, steady, carrying verses about the brevity of life, the brilliance of flowers, the certainty of death, the mystery of the gods. Others join, weaving their voices in harmony, accompanied by drums and flutes. The listeners sway gently, their eyes half closed, their hearts stirred by the rhythm. Poetry here is not ornament. It is nourishment, reassurance, a balm for the soul. Stay with me, because some poems have survived across centuries. They speak of the fragility of existence. We live on earth only briefly, like flowers that bloom and fade, like songs that rise and then fall silent. Yet they also speak of beauty, of joy, of the way flower and song give meaning to life. The Mexica accepted impermanence, not with fear but with reverence, using art to remind themselves that even fleeting things are precious. As you breathe slowly, imagine a blossom in your hand, delicate, fragrant, lasting only a moment. Yet in that moment, it is everything. Picture the music of the city. In the morning, drums sound from temples, marking the rhythm of ritual. In the afternoon, flutes play in markets, their notes light and cheerful. At night, families sing softly around the hearth, their voices blending with the crackle of fire. Music is everywhere, not only in ceremonies, but in work, in rest, in play. The soundscape of Tenochtitlan is never harsh, but steady, a background hum of life, song, and devotion. And here is another revelation. The Mexica prized oratory as much as song. To speak well, to weave words carefully, was considered a gift. Leaders were trained to use metaphors, to speak in poetry, to give counsel that soothed and persuaded. Parents instructed children to be humble in speech, to avoid boasting, to let words fall like flowers, measured, thoughtful, beautiful. The spoken word was itself a kind of ritual, a bridge between people, between generations, between earth and sky. Let's pause and imagine a Kalmakak lesson in oratory. A young student rises, his voice trembling at first, then growing steadier. He compares life to a painting, to a dream, to a fleeting flower. His teacher nods, guiding him gently, reminding him to breathe, to pause, to let silence carry as much weight as sound. The other students listen, their eyes reflecting torchlight, their hearts absorbing not only words but rhythm. The room feels safe, calm, full of quiet promise. Stay close, because education was also practical. Children learn how to weave mats, grind maize, repair canoes, plant crops, and carve tools. Even noble students learned humility through labor, carrying wood, cleaning temples, practicing restraint. The purpose was not only skill but character, shaping hearts as much as hands. To learn was to grow into harmony with community, to know one's place not as burden but as belonging. And here's a reassurance. The schools of Tenochtitlan remind us that knowledge was never separate from life. It was not stored away in books but lived in songs, in hands, in voices. The city itself was a classroom, every plaza a lesson, every canal a reminder, every temple a page in the book of the world. Isn't it soothing to think of learning as something woven gently into each day, as natural as breathing, as steady as the turning of stars? Let's dim the lamp further and imagine a festival song. The plaza is filled with dancers, their feathered cloaks shimmering in torchlight. Drums beat slowly, rattles shake, flutes sing. Poets recite verses about the gods, about life, about flowers blooming and fading. The crowd listens, sways, sings along. The air smells of copal and flowers. The night sky glows with stars. In that moment, the city itself becomes a song, its people joined in harmony, its heart steady and sure. Stay with me, because through poetry, music, and education, the Mexica found resilience. Empires may rise and fall, battles may come and go, but words, songs, and lessons endure. They teach children to grow, remind adults to pause, reassure elders that their wisdom is carried forward. The song does not end. It changes voices. It passes from one generation to the next, steady as the drum, fleeting as a flower, eternal as the stars. As you breathe slowly now, imagine yourself as a student in Tenochtitlan, sitting cross-legged on a mat, listening to a teacher's calm voice. Outside, the canal water ripples softly, a flute plays in the distance, and the smell of incense drifts in. You feel safe, included, connected to a long line of learners, poets, singers. You understand that words and music are not luxuries but lifelines, weaving you into the rhythm of the world. If palaces and schools gave structure to Tenochtitlan, then the marketplace of Tlatelolco gave it breath. Stay with me, because this was no ordinary market. It was the pulse of the city, a living river of people, goods, and voices, flowing every single day, swelling and shimmering like the waters of the lake itself. Tens of thousands came to trade, to buy, to sell, to share stories. To step into the market was to feel the empire's heart beating, steady and sure. Picture the plaza of Tlatelolco, In the morning, the mist still clings to the lake, but already merchants are setting out their goods. Cloaks spread on the ground form stalls of color. Piles of maize, beans, chilies, and tomatoes glow in the early light. Clay pots gleam, freshly fired. Baskets overflow with cacao beans, precious and small, used both as currency and as food. The air is filled with the smell of herbs, flowers, and roasted maize. The hum of voices rises gently, not chaotic but rhythmic, a sound like bees moving through blossoms. Stay with me, because the market was not noisy confusion. It was orderly, carefully arranged. Goods were grouped together. One section for food, another for pottery, another for tools, another for clothing and jewelry. Officials moved quietly among the people, keeping peace, settling disputes, ensuring that trade flowed smoothly. Scribes recorded transactions. Judges sat ready to resolve quarrels. Even with tens of thousands gathered, the atmosphere was calm, respectful, steady. Isn't it soothing to imagine such harmony, such balance in such a vast crowd? And here's a gentle twist. The market was not only for Tenochtitlan's people. Traders came from distant lands. Mixtec artisans, Maya merchants, people from the Gulf Coast, from Oaxaca, from far-off valleys and mountains. They brought turquoise and jade, jaguar pelts and parrot feathers, seashells and obsidian, salt and honey. The empire's reach stretched into plaza, each stall a window into another world. To walk through Tlatelolco was to walk across the empire itself, without ever leaving the city. Let's pause and imagine a single stall. A merchant kneels behind a cloak spread with cacao beans, jade beads, and tiny gold ornaments. He greets each passerby warmly, his eyes kind, his hands steady. He does not shout, he waits. A buyer kneels, examines the items, speaks softly. They bargain gently, both smiling, both patient. When they agree, they exchange goods with quiet satisfaction. There is no rush, no push. The market breathes like a living creature, slow and steady. Stay close, because the variety of foods alone was a marvel. Baskets of maize in every color, yellow, red, black, blue. Chilies of every shape, long and slender, short and round, green and fiery, red and smoked. Tomatoes fresh and bright, avocados smooth and dark, amaranth seeds glittering like tiny gems. There are beans, squash, cacao, honey, and vanilla. Fresh fish from the lake, frogs and water birds, turkeys and dogs raised for food. Flowers in heaps, their fragrance mingling with the spice of herbs. Imagine the scents, the colors, the textures. It is as if the whole natural world is gathered here, soft and abundant. And here is another revelation. The market was not only for goods, but also for services. There were barbers trimming hair with obsidian blades, healers offering herbs and poultices, scribes painting codices, jewelers repairing ornaments, weavers selling freshly dyed cloth. Even storytellers and entertainers would be found, drawing small circles of listeners with soft words and gentle songs. The market was a theater as much as an exchange, a place where life unfolded before your eyes. Let's lower the lamp in our minds and imagine a festival day in the market. Tens of thousands gather, the plaza overflowing. Dancers perform to the slow beat of drums. Singers raise hymns to the gods. Merchants offer special goods brought from distant corners. Judges sit beneath awnings. Scribes record tribute payments. Officials move quietly through the crowd. The air is thick with incense and the scent of roasting maize. Yet even with such numbers, the mood is unhurried, calm, as if the whole city has agreed to move in one slow, steady rhythm. Stay with me, because the market of Tlatelolco also connected lives. A farmer might trade his maize for salt, his beans for cotton. A noble woman might purchase fine cloaks and jade ornaments. A priest might acquire incense and flowers for rituals. A mother might find fresh chilies and tomatoes for her family stew. Each exchange was more than trade. It was trust, it was connection, it was the weaving of community. The marketplace was as sacred as a temple, as vital as a palace, as nourishing as a chinampa. And here's the reassurance. Though the empire was vast, though its rulers commanded armies and collected tributes, the daily rhythm of life was grounded in this simple exchange. Goods passed from hand to hand. Voices murmured kindly. People met as equals, eye to eye. Isn't it soothing to think of empire not only as power but as shared sustenance, as gentle barter, as neighborly trust. Picture now the end of the day. The sun dips low, casting golden light over the plaza. Merchants pack their goods into baskets, fold up their cloaks, tie bundles with maguey cords. Buyers carry their treasures home, baskets of food, newly woven mats, small ornaments. The plaza empties slowly, like a tide receding, leaving the stones quiet again. Yet in the silence you can still feel the rhythm, the hum of voices, the warmth of exchange. The market breathes out, then rests, ready to breathe and again tomorrow. Stay with me, because Spanish chroniclers who later saw Tlatelolco's market were astonished. They wrote that it was larger and more orderly than any market in Europe, that its goods were more abundant, its organization more refined. Imagine the awe of seeing such harmony, such variety, such abundance. Tens of thousands gathered not in noise but in calm balance, in mutual respect. It was a wonder then, and it remains a wonder now. Let's dim the lamp further, and picture yourself walking slowly through the market. The stones are warm beneath your sandals, the air fragrant with flowers and chilies, the sound of drums faint in the distance. You pause at a stall, admire a bright feather cloak, touch the smooth surface of a jade bead, breathe in the scent of roasted cacao. You smile at the merchant, who smiles back, and in that moment you feel part of the city's rhythm, part of its heartbeat, part of its harmony. And here's a final gentle truth. The marketplace of Tlatelolco was not only the empire's stomach, filling it with food, nor only its treasury, filling it with wealth. It was its soul, reminding people that life was shared, that abundance was not for one but for all, that harmony was possible even in crowds. Through trade, through words, through trust, the market whispered the same message as the poets and the priests. Life is brief, but it can be beautiful, especially when shared. As you breathe slowly now, imagine the plaza under the stars, empty to people, silent but not lonely. The stones still hold the warmth of the day. The fragrance of flowers still lingers. The memory of voices hums gently in the air. You are safe. The city is calm. The empire rests. Tomorrow, the market will live again, steady as the heartbeat of the world. Stay close now, because in this chapter we will leave the stones of the plaza behind and step onto the water. The markets and palaces of Tenochtitlan were extraordinary, but the canals, those shimmering pathways between chinampas, temples, and homes, were just as vital, just as soothing. To glide along the waters of the Great Lake was to move through the veins of the empire itself, calm and steady, guided by the gentle stroke of paddles. Picture in your mind morning mist drifting low across the lake, the surface smooth as polished obsidian. A canoe waits at the edge of a chinampa, its wooden body worn smooth by years of use. You step inside, settling onto a woven mat at the bottom, and a boatman kneels at the stern. With a quiet push of his paddle, the canoe glides forward. The water parts silently, rippling outward in soft rings. Above, the sun rises slowly, lighting the mountains that circle the valley, turning their peaks gold. The city awakens not with haste, but with rhythm. Stay with me, because on these canals, life was lived as much as on land. Canoes carried maize from chinampas to markets, carried families to festivals, carried priests to temples. Fishermen cast nets, their movements graceful, pulling up shimmering fish and frogs. Women bent low over the water, washing clothes with gentle splashes, their voices carrying softly as they sang. Children laughed as they played near the banks, chasing each other along narrow walkways. The canals were not separate from life. They were life, steady, flowing, essential. And here's a gentle twist. While European cities bustled with carts and horses on cobblestone streets, Tenochtitlan moved upon water. No clattering hooves, no rattling wheels, only the soft dip of paddles, the ripple of water, the whisper of canoes brushing past one another. Imagine how soothing that soundscape would have been. No harsh noise, only the natural hush of water carrying life quietly onward. Isn't it calming to imagine an empire flowing like a lake, steady and unhurried? Let's pause now and drift through the city's great causeways. They stretched out across the lake like arms, linking Tenochtitlan to the mainland, carrying people and goods back and forth. Alongside them, canals threaded through neighborhoods, gardens, and plazas. Canoes pass beneath wooden bridges, their paddlers nodding in greeting as they move along. The canals were alive but never frantic. Each movement measured, each journey part of the same steady current. Stay with me, because chinampas, the floating gardens, line the waterways in endless rows. From your canoe, you see green plots heavy with maize, beans, and squash, their edges secure with reeds and willow trees. Farmers tend them from small boats, pulling weeds, watering, harvesting, their reflections shimmering on the surface. Birds will overhead, their cries mingling with the sound of paddles. The air smells of wet earth, fresh maize, and blossoms. The chinampas were not only ingenious, they were beautiful, a patchwork quilt of life floating upon the lake. And here is another revelation. The canals were also a marketplace, a moving one. Merchants guided canoes heavy with goods. Piles of chilies, stacks of pottery, baskets of fish, bundles of flowers. Buyers hailed them from the banks, striking bargains across the water. Sometimes entire families set out in canoes, their baskets full, their voices light, their laughter echoing. Trade was not confined to plazas. It drifted gently along the canals, making the water itself a place of exchange. Imagine, for a moment, gliding into the city's heart, toward the great ceremonial precinct. Temples rise from the water's edge, their white stucco glowing in sunlight. Canoes gather at the landings, their paddlers stepping out with offerings, food, and flowers. Priests in white robes move among them, guiding the goods toward storerooms and altars. The water laps gently at the steps, carrying with it the scent of incense and blossoms. The city breathes with the rhythm of water, every temple mirrored in its shining surface. Stay close, because the canals also carried memory. Songs were sung upon them, poems recited, stories told. Lovers drifted in small canoes at dusk, whispering as the stars appeared. Families shared food upon the water, eating tamales wrapped in leaves, drinking chocolate sweetened with honey. Festivals spilled onto the canals, too. Parades of decorated boats, dancers moving to drums that echoed across the lake. The water reflected it all, steady, calm, a mirror of life. Let's lower the lamp in our minds and drift into night. The city glows softly with torches, their reflections quivering on the water. Canoes glide silently, guided by the faint light of stars and fires. The air is cool, carrying the scent of flowers from chinampas, the faint sound of flutes from distant courtyards. You lie back in the canoe, the wooden sides cradling you, the water rocking gently. Above, the Milky Way stretches across the sky like a painted cloak. In that moment, you are afloat between worlds. Sky above, water below, the city resting quietly around you. And here's the reassurance. Though empires may fall, though stones may crumble, the rhythm of water remains eternal. The canals of Tenochtitlán whisper that life can be lived gently, that movement need not be hurried, that even a vast city can flow like a dream. Isn't it soothing to imagine yourself carried not by noise but by water, steady and sure, each ripple like a heartbeat? Picture yourself now gliding home at the end of the day. The market is closed, the temples have quieted, the chinampas rest. Your canoe moves slowly through the water, the paddle dipping softly, the stars bright above. The city fades into silence, leaving only the sound of water lapping against wood. Steady as breath, steady as sleep. You arrive at your home, step onto the bank, and glance once more at the water. It glimmers faintly, promising to carry life again tomorrow, as is always done. Stay with me, because in Chapter 10 we will leave the water and step into the rituals of the calendar, where time itself was kept in rhythm, where days were named and measured not only to mark the seasons, but to remind the people their place in the cosmos. The canals carried life, but the calendar carried meaning, binding the city to sun, stars, and gods. Together, they formed the rhythm of empire, one flowing in water, the other flowing in time. Stay with me now, because in this chapter we will leave the water's gentle rocking and step into the flow of time itself. For the Mexica, time was not a straight line rushing forward, but a circle, repeating, echoing, carrying memory and rhythm. The sun rose and set, the seasons turned, the rains returned. The maize sprouted and ripened, and all was bound into a great woven calendar. To live in Tenochtitlan was to move not only along canals and streets, but also along days carefully named, counted, and celebrated. Picture dawn in the city once again. The first golden rays spill the mountains, glinting on the temple tops. Priests ascend steps slowly, offering incense, blowing conch shells to greet the rising sun. But their actions are not chosen at random. They fall precisely within cycles of ritual time. Every day carried a sign, a number, a meaning. Every action was tied to that meaning. Every festival placed carefully within the turning wheel. Time was not simply passing. It was alive, breathing, guiding. Stay with me, because the Mexica used two main calendars. The first was the Zayapowali, the solar year of 365 days, divided into 18 months of 20 days each, plus 5 extra days known as the Nemontemi. Each month carried its own rituals, its own festivals, marking the agricultural cycles, honoring gods, remembering the harmony between earth and sky. The second was the Tanaapwali, the sacred calendar of 260 days, woven from cycles of numbers and signs, used a divine fate to guide births, marriages, journeys, and wars. Together, the two calendars intertwine like threads, forming a great cycle that returned every 52 years in a moment of renewal. And here is a gentle twist. Those 52-year cycles were considered so important that when one ended, the people extinguished every fire in the city. In darkness, they waited for the priest to light a new flame, drawn from a sacred ritual on a mountaintop. If the fire caught, if the sun rose again, the world was renewed for another cycle. Imagine the stillness of that night. Every hearth dark, every torch extinguished, the city silent, holding its breath. Then at dawn, flames carried from the mountaintop rekindled every home, every hearth, every temple. The people rejoiced, relieved, warmed again by light. Isn't it soothing to think of time not as endless, but as a circle of renewal, as steady as the rising of the sun? Let's pause now and imagine the festivals of the Zayapowali. Each month had its own focus. In one, they honored the rains, offering flowers and songs to Tlaloc, asking for water to bless the fields. In another, they celebrated the maize harvest, dancing and feasting with gratitude for abundance. In another, they honored the dead, placing food and flowers on altars, welcoming ancestors into their homes. The calendar guided not only work, but joy, not only duty, but celebration. Each turn of days reminded the people of their place in the great harmony of nature. Stay with me, because the Tanaapwali was more mysterious, more intimate. It paired numbers from 1 to 13 with 20 different day signs: jaguar, reed, flint, house, wind, and many others. Each day was unique, carrying a particular energy, a particular meaning. Priests studied these cycles carefully, guiding parents on the naming of children, advising rulers on auspicious days for travel, reminding farmers when to plant. To live was to be attuned to the sacred rhythm, to listen not only to the sun and the moon, but to the unseen heartbeat of time itself. And here is another revelation. Time, for the Mexica, was not heavy. It was not a burden to be counted anxiously. It was a gift, a rhythm, a reminder connection. They did not fear its passing so much as they honored its return. Like flowers that bloom and fade, like songs that rise and fall, time was fleeting, yes, but also beautiful. Poetry captured this truth, that life was brief, yet within its brevity lay meaning, joy, harmony. Doesn't it ease your heart to think of time as a song rather than a clock, as a circle rather than a line? Picture now the 5 Nemontemi days, the extra ones at the end of the year. They were considered days of uncertainty, times when people refrained from work, stayed close to home, avoided new ventures. Yet even in their uncertainty, there were gentle pauses, moments of reflection before the year renewed. Imagine sitting quietly with family during these days, sharing food, telling stories, waiting together for calendar to turn. The fire on the hearth glows softly. Children rest against their parents. Outside, the city lies calm. Even uncertainty becomes an invitation to stillness, to patience, to peace. Let's dim the lamp in our minds and imagine a single festival. It is the month of Panquetzalizli, dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird god of the sun. The plaza fills with people. Banners wave in bright colors. Dancers move in circles, their feather cloaks shimmering. Drums beat slowly, steadily, like the heartbeat of the earth. Priests sing hymns, their voices carrying over crowd. Flowers are scattered. Food is shared. Joy flows like water. Yet beneath the noise is calm, a steady assurance. The sun will rise, the year will turn, life will continue. Stay with me, because the calendar was not abstract. It touched daily life. When to plant, when to harvest, when to wed, when to rest. It reminded people that they were part of a greater rhythm, that their small days were woven into vast cycles of sun and moon. The canals carried food. The calendar carried meaning. Together, they sustained the city not only in body, but in spirit. And here's a reassurance. Though centuries have passed, though empires have risen and fallen, the sun still rises, the moon still waxes and wanes, the stars still wheel overhead. The rhythm remains steady, eternal, whispering the same message to us as it did to the Mexica. That time is not to be feared, but to be honored, lived, savored. Isn't it common to think of yourself not racing against time, but drifting with it like a canoe upon a gentle canal? Picture yourself now lying on a mat at night, a fire flickering nearby. Outside, the priests are marking the new day, blowing conch shells, chanting softly. You close your eyes, breathing with their rhythm, feeling the turning of time not as pressure, but as peace. The calendar is not a clock ticking. It is a song repeating, a circle turning, a flower blooming, a star rising. You rest in his embrace, safe, steady, unhurried. Stay close. Because in Chapter 11 we will step into the rituals themselves, not only the calendar that guided them, but the ceremonies that gave them shape, the incense, the dances, the offerings, the songs that filled the plazas and temples with color and calm. If the calendar was a rhythm, the rituals were the melody, together forming a song that carried the empire forward, steady as the rising sun. Stay with me, because in this chapter we will step into the heart of ritual. If the calendar gave rhythm to time, the ceremonies gave it voice. Imagine the plazas of Tenochtitlan, wide and glowing under sun or torchlight, filled with the fragrance of copal, the slow beat of drums, the shimmer of feathers in motion. Rituals were not simply duties to the gods. They were the song of the city, weaving the people into harmony with sun, moon, rain, and earth. To live in the Mexico world was to live inside ritual, steady, familiar, reassuring. Picture dawn at the great temple precinct. The air is cool, the city just stirring, but already priests move slowly up the steps of the Templo Mayor, carrying bowls of incense. They wear white cloaks, their hair bound, their steps deliberate. At the top they pause, lifting conch shells to their lips. The sound is low, drawn out, rising into the pale sky, as if summoning the sun itself. Incense smoke curls upward, fragrant and sweet, drifting on the breeze. The first rays of light strike the temple stones, glowing gold. In that moment, the ritual is not grand but gentle, a greeting to the day, a promise of rhythm. Stay with me, because ceremonies unfolded in cycles, each one connected to the months of the solar year, each tied to the sacred calendar. Some were vast, filling plazas with dancers and singers, their movements like waves upon water. Others were intimate, small offerings in family courtyards, maize dough figurines placed beside hearth fires, flowers set afloat upon canals, whispered prayers spoken at night. Ritual was not only for priests, but for everyone, woven into each household, each meal, each day. And here's a gentle twist. Though many imagine Aztec ceremonies only as grand or fierce, they were just as often tender, filled with song, flowers, and the sharing of food. A family might honor the goddess of maize by preparing tamales and offering the first bites to the hearth fire. Children might weave garlands of blossoms to lay upon small household altars. Neighbors might gather to sing quietly, their voices blending with the crackle of fire and the rustle of leaves in the courtyard. Isn't it calming to think of ritual as something simple, soft, close to home? Let's pause and enter a festival in the plaza. It is midday, the sun high, the stones warm underfoot. Thousands gather, their cloaks bright with woven colors, their hair adorned with feathers and flowers. Musicians sit at the edges, beating drums in slow, steady rhythm. playing flutes whose notes rise like birdsong. Dancers move in circles, their steps measured, their arms raised toward the sky. Priests chant hymns, their voices deep, carrying above the music. The air is full of color, sound, and scent, yet the mood is calm, reverent, steady. Every movement has meaning. Every sound is part of the larger song. Stay close, because rituals marked every passage of life. When a child was born, priests bathed it, giving prayers and blessings, placing small symbols in its hands, a tiny shield for boys, a weaving tool for girls. When young people came of age, ceremonies marked their new roles in community. Marriages were celebrated with offerings of food, flowers, and shared cloaks, binding families together. Death, too, was honored with ritual. Food left for the journey, prayers spoken, candles burning softly. The cycle of life was framed in gentle ceremony, reminding all that they were never alone, always part of a greater harmony. And here is another revelation. The Mexica understood ritual as a way of keeping the world in balance. They believed the gods had given life through sacrifice and effort, and humans repaid that gift through offerings, songs, dances, and devotion. Each ritual was a renewal of gratitude, a reminder that maize grew because rain fell, that rain fell because sky and earth were in harmony, and that harmony endured through human remembrance. Ritual was not fear but thanks, not burden but beauty. Imagine now the small details. The soft rattle of shells tied to a dancer's ankles, sounding like rain with every step. The shimmer of bright green quetzal feathers catching sunlight as a cloak sways in motion. The sweet, heavy scent of flowers scattered across the plaza floor. The glow of painted faces, the flash of gold jewelry, the hush of thousands moving as one. It is not noise, but a great tide of sound and color, rising and falling in rhythm, like breathing. Stay with me, because ceremonies touch the very senses of the people. Copal incense was offered not only for the gods, but also for comfort it brought. The smoke curling gently, carrying prayers upward, calming hearts. Songs repeated lines like mantras, soothing through rhythm and repetition. Dances moved in patterns that echoed the cycles of the stars, steady, predictable, reassuring. Ritual was a form of meditation, a collective breath, a steadying of the city's heart. Let's lower the lamp in our minds and drift into a night ceremony. Torches line the plaza, their flames flickering softly. The stars wheel above, mirroring canals. Priests chant slowly, their voices low, deep, humming through the air. Dancers move in shadows, their feathered headdresses glowing in firelight. The crowd watches silently, swaying with the rhythm, their eyes reflecting the flames. The city seems to breathe as one, its heartbeat steady, its spirit calm. You feel yourself a part of it, safe, included, wrapped in the night's embrace. And here's a reassurance. Rituals, no matter how grand or simple, reminded the Mexica that life was fragile, fleeting, but also beautiful and shared. Each flower offered, each song sung, each dance performed was a way of saying, we are here, we are together, we honor the world that holds us. Isn't it soothing to imagine your own life as part of such a song, woven gently into the fabric of time and community? Picture yourself now standing at the edge of a courtyard ritual. The air is fragrant with herbs and smoke. The voices of singers rise and fall. The drums beat softly. You breathe slowly, matching their rhythm. A child hands you a flower, smiling. You place it gently upon the altar, feeling the warmth of fire, the presence of others beside you. In that moment, you are not separate, not rushed, not anxious. You are steady, safe, at home in the rhythm of ritual. Stay close, because in Chapter 12 we will wander into the artisan's world. The weavers, the sculptors, the feather workers, those who crafted the beauty that adorned rituals and daily life alike. If rituals were the melody, their art was the color, the texture, the living embroidery upon the city song. Together, they remind us that beauty and devotion are never far apart, always moving together, steady as breath, soft as sleep. Stay with me, because in this chapter we will step into the workshops and courtyards where artisans work quietly, their hands steady, their eyes attentive, their hearts bound to the rhythm of creation. If the rituals of Tenochtitlan were the melody, then the work of artisans gave them texture, color, and form. Cloaks, Jewelry, pottery, featherwork, and stone carvings. These were not luxuries alone, but necessities for beauty, for ceremony, for the weaving together of daily life and divine devotion. Picture a quiet morning in a weaver's home. The first light of the sun filters through reed mats covering the doorway. A loom stands ready, threads stretched taut. A woman sits before it, her back straight, her fingers moving in rhythm. She pulls the shuttle through, beats it down gently, then repeats, the sound soft and steady. Thread by thread, a cloak takes shape, its patterns recalling stars, rivers, flowers. The air smells faintly of cotton and dye, the floor cool beneath her. Outside, children play, their laughter a counterpoint to the loom's rhythm. Stay with me, because textiles were more than clothing. They were markers of identity, status, and devotion. A simple cloak woven from agave fibers spoke of humility and daily work. A soft cotton garment dyed in bright colors spoke of wealth and standing. A cloak embroidered with shimmering feathers or woven in intricate patterns could be offered to a god, draped upon a temple statue, or gifted to a noble. To weave was not only to clothe, but to tell stories, to honor gods, to anchor memory in fabric. And here is a gentle twist. Featherwork was among the most prized arts of the Mexica. Artisans known as Amantica worked in quiet rooms, arranging feathers from quetzal, macaws, parrots, and hummingbirds into brilliant mosaics. They glued the feathers carefully onto backing of cloth or paper, creating images of gods, shields, capes, and banners that shimmered in sunlight. Imagine the patience, the delicacy, the reverence of such work. Each feather a fragment of sky, of forest, of flight, placed to create a living rainbow. Isn't it common to think of art as something so gentle, so luminous, so fleeting yet enduring? Let's pause and step into a sculptor's workshop. Blocks of volcanic stone stand against the wall, their surfaces rough. The sculptor kneels, a hammer of hardest stone in one hand, a chisel of obsidian in the other. With steady taps, he chips away, shaping curves, faces, glyphs. Dust rises, catching the light. Slowly, a figure emerges, perhaps a god, perhaps an animal, perhaps a guardian spirit. The sculptor's breath is slow, his movements patient. Days pass, weeks pass, until at last the stone glows with smoothness, the form alive. The statue will be placed in the temple, its presence a silent hymn. Stay close, because artisans work not only for ritual but for daily life. Potters shape clay into bowls, cups, jars, each one smooth by hand, fired in simple kilns. Some were plain, for kitchens and homes. Others were painted with bright designs, birds, flowers, waves, stars, serving in feasts and ceremonies. Imagine holding one in your hand, its surface warm from fire, its weight steady, its design telling a quiet story. Pottery held water, maize, cacao, but it also held meaning, beauty made tangible. And here is another revelation. Artistry was not separated from devotion. To weave, to carve, to paint, to shape feathers was an offering as much as a ritual. The gods were honored through beauty, through skill, through the patience of human hands. Artisans were not simply workers. They were bridge makers, linking daily life to divine presence. Their creations adorned temples, plazas, markets, and homes, reminding people that beauty and reverence walk hand in hand. Imagine now the jeweler's craft. In small workshops, they melted gold and silver, shaped turquoise and jade, polished obsidian to a glassy sheen. They inlaid stones into masks, rings, and pendants, creating objects that gleamed like fire and water. These ornaments adorned nobles, priests, dancers, and statues of gods. The work required not only skill but vision, the ability to see the beauty hidden in stone, to coax it out gently, to let it shine. The jeweler's hands were steady, his heart quiet, his devotion clear. Stay with me, because artistry touched the senses. Cloaks brushed softly against the skin, feathers shimmered in torchlight. Clay vessels held the fragrance of food. Stone carvings cast cool shadows in temples. Jewelry caught and reflected the sun. Beauty was not distant. It was close, immediate, part of every breath. Isn't it soothing to imagine a world where art was not hidden in galleries, but woven into daily life, surrounding every meal, every prayer, every festival? Let's lower the lamp in our minds and imagine artisans preparing for a great festival. Weavers finished cloaks dyed in bright reds and blues, ready to be worn by dancers. Feather workers create banners that will shimmer in the sun. Sculptors polish stone figures, ready to be carried into the plaza. Potters stack bowls painted with flowers, ready to hold food for feasts. Jewelers set the final stones into necklaces and masks. Each craft joins the others, creating a whole tapestry of beauty that will soon fill the city with color and life. The artisans' work is quiet, patient, unseen by many, but without it, the festival could not sing. And here's a reassurance. Artisans remind us that beauty is not an accident but a choice, an effort, a devotion. Every thread, every feather, every stone is placed with care, with patience, with love. The city's strength was not only in its walls or armies, but in the gentle labor of hands, in the daily offering of craft. Isn't it calming to know that even the mightiest empire rested on the soft rhythm of creation? Picture yourself now sitting in a weaver's courtyard at dusk. The loom creaks softly, the threads glowing in firelight. A child plays nearby, scattering flower petals across the floor. The air smells of dye and maize cooking on the hearth. The weaver hums a song as she works, her voice steady, soothing. You watch her hands move, the pattern emerging slowly, like stars appearing in the night sky. You feel safe, surrounded by patience, by care, by quiet beauty. Stay close, because in Chapter 13, we will leave the workshops and step into the world of merchants, those who carried these creations across mountains, valleys, and seas. If artisans gave form to beauty, merchants gave it wings, spreading across the empire, connecting distant peoples through trust and trade. Together, they remind us that beauty not only needs to be made, it needs to be shared, carried, offered like a gift upon the waters. Stay with me, because in this chapter we will leave the workshops of the artisans and follow the merchants, those who carried beauty and necessity alike across the wide landscapes of the Mexico world. If artisans gave form to objects, merchants gave them wings. They were known as Paktika, and their journey stretched far beyond the valley, across deserts, forests, and mountains, weaving the empire into a web of exchange and connection. Their footsteps were steady, their packs heavy, their hearts filled with patience. Picture dawn in Tenochtitlan, the market of Tlatelolco beginning to stir. Merchants gather in small groups, their cloaks wrapped tight, their voices soft. They adjust their burdens, packs filled with woven cloth, cacao beans, obsidian blades, jewelry, feathers, salt. Some prepare to leave, to cross valleys and rivers toward distant towns. Others arrive from afar, their sandals worn, their faces weathered by sun and wind, bringing goods unknown in the basin. The air smells faintly of dust and copal incense, of roasted maize and hot cacao. It is the scent of exchange, of journeys meeting in one place. Stay with me, because the Paktika were not ordinary traders. They were both respected and secretive, moving in groups, often under protection of the gods. Their patron deity was Tenochtitlán, Lord of the Nose, who guided travelers. At night, they would tie their staffs together in a bundle, placing offerings before it, whispering prayers for safe passage. Imagine them sitting quietly beneath the stars, their faces lit by a small fire, their staffs leaning together, a sign of unity and protection. Isn't it common to think of travelers drawing strength not from walls or weapons, but from ritual, faith, and companionship? And here's a gentle twist. Merchants were not only carriers of goods, they were carriers of news, of stories, of knowledge. As they moved from city to city, they learned of alliances, of disputes, of distant customs. They listened and remembered, bringing back not just cacao and feathers, but whispers of change, tales of faraway rulers, hints of opportunity or danger. They were the quiet messengers of empire, their words as valuable as their wares. Let's pause and imagine their journeys. The road winds upward into mountains, the air thin and cool, pine trees rustling in the breeze. The merchants walk in single file, their packs swaying, their sandals crunching on stone. At midday they rest in the shade, drinking water from gourds, sharing tamales wrapped in maize husks. They speak little, conserving breath, conserving energy. As evening falls, they reach a clearing where they light a small fire. The sky fills with stars, the earth cool beneath their blankets. They whisper prayers to Tenochtitlan, trusting the road to the next dawn. Stay with me, because the goods they carry tell stories of connection, From the hot, humid lowlands came cacao beans, precious not only as drink, but as currency itself. From forests came jaguar pelts, bright feathers, and rubber. From mines and rivers came turquoise, jade, and obsidian. From salt flats came crystals of white that preserved food and seasoned meals. From artisans came cloaks, jewelry, and pottery, each one carefully packed, ready to be offered in distant markets. Every good was more than an object. It was a piece of the world, carried gently across distance. And here is another revelation. Markets were not only about exchange, but about community. In Tlatelolco, the largest of them all, tens of thousands gathered each day. Merchants displayed their goods upon woven mats. Buyers walked slowly, inspecting, bargaining softly. Officials oversaw the fairness of exchange, ensuring peace. The hum of voices rose like a tide, steady and calm. The market was not chaos but harmony, a daily ritual connection of trust. Imagine standing among the stalls, the air filled with color, scent, and sound, yet all of it flowing like a river, smooth and steady. Imagine now a merchant returning home after weeks on the road. His cloak is dusty, his sandals worn, but his pack is lighter, his heart full. He carries news of distant lands, stories of new alliances, and gifts for his family. A small necklace, a bundle of cacao, a carved figurine. His children run to greet him. His partner welcomes him with food and warmth. The house fills with laughter, with relief, with the comfort of return. Isn't it soothing to think of journeys ending not in noise, but in embrace and the safety of home? Stay with me, because the Paktika remind us that empire is not only built by rulers and warriors, but by walkers, by carriers, by patient travelers who stitched the world together. Their steps were not grand, but they were steady, and with each journey they wove the valley more tightly into fabric of Mesoamerica. Without them, there would have been no exchange of beauty, no spreading of knowledge, no steady heartbeat of connection. Let's lower the lamp in our minds and picture the market at dusk. The stalls are closing, merchants counting cacao beans, folding cloth, packing away pottery. The sun sets, painting the sky with gold and purple. The lake reflects the fading light, canoes drifting back to shore. The air cools, voices quiet, torches flicker to life. Families walk home carrying baskets of food, children sleepy, parents content. The market rests, its heartbeat slowing, ready to rise again with dawn. And here's a reassurance. Merchants remind us that the world is held together not by sudden force, but by steady exchange, by trust carried step by step. To trade is to believe in tomorrow, to believe that journeys will end safely, that others will welcome what you bring. Isn't it calming to imagine your own life as a journey like theirs, measured, patient, always moving forward, always carrying gift to share? Picture yourself now walking among the Paktika at night. The fire is small, the stars bright, the air cool. The merchants sit quietly, eating, resting, their staffs tied together in a bundle before them. You sit among them, sharing food, sharing silence. You feel their calm, their patience, their quiet strength. You know that the road ahead will be long, but you are safe, accompanied, part of their steady rhythm. Stay close, because in Chapter 14, we will step into the heart of daily food and feasting. If merchants carried cacao and maize, then kitchens and markets transformed them into meals that nourish body and spirit alike. From tamales and tortillas to cacao drinks and festivals of abundance, we will linger on the taste and scent of a world sustained by care and flavor. Together, merchants and cooks remind us that journeys always end in sharing, that effort always returns to the hearth, to meal, to the table where all may rest. Stay close with me, because in this chapter we will step softly into kitchens and marketplaces where the heart of Aztec life truly pulsed. If merchants carried cacao and maize across mountains and valleys, it was here, in the warm glow of hearths and the bustle of open-air markets, that these treasures were transformed into meals, nourishing not only bodies but also community and spirit. To sit beside an Aztec hearth was to feel both rooted and uplifted, surrounded by the comforting sense of maize, beans, and chilies. Picture dawn in Tenochtitlan. The first light spills across the lake, canoes returning from Chinampas with baskets of fresh vegetables and fish. Within homes, women kneel before grinding stones, the metates. Their movements are rhythmic back and forth, as kernels of maize are crushed into smooth masa. The sound is steady, almost musical, a heartbeat of daily life. Children stir from their mats, the air already rich with the warm, earthy scent of maize dough. Tortillas will soon be pressed and laid upon clay griddles, the comales, their surfaces sizzling gently. Stay with me, because maize was not simply food, it was life itself. The Mexica believed humans were fashioned from maize dough, their very flesh an echo of the grain. To eat tortillas, tamales, or atole was not only to fill the stomach, but to renew the bond between body and cosmos. Every meal, however humble, carried a whispered devotion, a reminder that sustenance was sacred. Isn't it soothing to think of eating not as a rush or burden, but as a soft ritual, a daily affirmation of connection? And here is a gentle twist. While we may picture Aztec meals as grand banquets in palaces, the true essence of food was found in the quiet routines of households. Families gathered around the hearth, sharing tamales wrapped in maize husks, sipping warm drinks of atole flavored with honey or chilies. Children dipped tortillas into beans, elders savored bowls of steaming stews. Food was communal, shared from the same pot, eaten slowly with gratitude. It was not the grandeur of feasting that mattered most, but the everyday comfort of nourishment shared. Let's pause and step into a bustling marketplace. The market of Tlatelolco spreads wide, stalls arranged in rows, shaded by woven mats. The air hums with voices, gentle bargaining, the rustle of cloaks. Vendors display heaps of tomatoes, squash, amaranth, and chilies. Piles of cacao beans glisten in baskets, counted carefully for trade. Turkeys are tethered near the stalls, their feathers shimmering in sunlight. Fish, dried or fresh, are laid upon reed mats. Women sell steaming tamales wrapped in leaves, their scents rising like invitations. The marketplace is alive, yet steady, its energy flowing like a calm river. Stay with me, because food in the Mexico world was varied and inventive. Maize formed the foundation, but was joined by beans, chilies, squash, tomatoes, and amaranth, creating a rainbow of flavors and textures. From lakes came fish and waterfowl. From fields came herbs and greens. From orchards came fruits like prickly pears and avocados. Even insects like grasshoppers and maguey worms found their place in the diet, toasted and seasoned with salt. Far from monotonous, the cuisine was rich, diverse, and deeply tied to the land. And here's another revelation. Cacao was both drink and currency. Beans were measured and counted, traded for food, cloth, or tools. When ground and mixed with water, sometimes spiced with chili, sometimes sweetened with honey, cacao became a drink of energy and ritual. Nobles sipped it in golden cups, but even merchants and commoners, when they could afford it, savored its bitter, invigorating taste. Imagine holding such a cup in your hands, the liquid warm, the scent earthy and rich, the taste awakening yet grounding. Picture now a noble feast. Within a palace courtyard, torches glow, musicians play soft drums and flutes. Servants carry trays of food, tamales filled with beans and chilies, turkey stews fragrant with herbs, maize cakes drizzle with honey. Bowls of cacao drinks are passed around, each one flavored differently. Some spiced, some floral, some thick and frothy. Guests recline on mats, their cloaks bright, their voices soft with laughter. Feasting is not rushed but languid, each course savored, each drink shared. The air is filled with warmth, color, and community. Stay with me, because food was also woven into ritual. During festivals, special tamales were prepared, some shaped as offerings, others shared among neighbors. Families left bowls of food at household altars, feeding both the living and the unseen. The gods were offered the first bites, the choicest morsels, the sweetest drinks. To eat was to honor the divine, to acknowledge that sustenance flowed not only from human labor, but from cosmic generosity. Isn't it calming to imagine your own meals as small rituals of gratitude, simple yet profound? And here's a reassurance. Even in an empire as vast as Mexico, the daily rhythm of grinding maize, cooking beans, and pressing tortillas anchored life. No matter how uncertain politics or weather might be, the hearth fire always glowed, the grinding stone always sang, the meal always gathered family together. Food was constancy, comfort, and care. Let's lower the lamp in our minds and drift into an evening kitchen. The fire crackles softly in the hearth. Shadows flicker on clay walls. A pot simmers, its steam carrying the scent of herbs and chilies. Children huddle near the warmth, their voices quiet, their eyes heavy with sleep. A mother presses tortillas, her hands moving with practiced grace. Outside, the night hums with insects, the lake reflects the stars. Inside, all is safe, steady, and nourished. You breathe deeply, matching the rhythm of the kitchen, feeling warmth spread through your own body. Stay close, because in Chapter 15 we will linger on education and calm discipline, how children of the Empire, from noble to commoner, were guided by teachers and family alike, learning not only skills but also patience, respect, and devotion. If food sustained the body, education nourished the mind and spirit, shaping lives with the same steady rhythm. Together, they remind us that nourishment comes in many forms. Each is vital, each is soothing as a steady meal by the hearth. Stay close with me, because in this chapter we will walk into the courtyards and schools where Aztec children grew, where gentle discipline, ritual, and lessons gave shape to their lives. If food nourished the body, then education nourished the mind and spirit, reminding each person their place within family, community, and cosmos. It was not only about learning tasks, but about learning balance, respect, and patience. Picture early morning in Tenochtitlán. The sun rises over Lake Texcoco, light spreading across rooftops and courtyards. Children stir from reed mats, rubbing their eyes, pulling on simple cloaks. A mother hands her daughter a small basket, telling her to fetch water from the canal. A father instructs his son to tend the maize plot near their home. Before school, children learn from home. Chores, weaving, fishing, planting, carrying. Their lessons begin in daily rhythm, in small tasks done with care. Stay with me, because the Mexica believed children were precious gifts, but also seeds that required tending. From birth, rituals guided their path. A newborn was bathed, blessed, and given symbolic tools. A boy a small shield or bow, a girl a spindle or weaving stick. Signs of roles they would grow into. Parents spoke words of guidance, prayers that their child would be strong, respectful, and steady. Childhood was not left to chance. It was nurtured with gentle intention. Isn't it calming to imagine such care woven into each stage of life? And here is a gentle twist. Education was not reserved for nobles. Every child, whether commoner or noble, boy or girl, received formal schooling. This was rare in the world of the 15th century, but to the Mexica, it was essential. Society thrived only if everyone knew their duties, their rituals, their crafts. The schools were not the same. Nobles and commoners attended different places, but the principle was clear. All children must learn. Let's pause and step into the calm world of the Telpacali, the House of Youth, where commoner boys were trained. The building is simple, walls of stone and wood, a courtyard open to the sky. Inside, boys gather at dawn, their cloaks plain, their eyes attentive. Teachers speak softly yet firmly, reminding them of respect for elders, of obedience, of courage. They practice carrying firewood, hauling loads, building endurance for future service. At night they sleep on reed mats, rising early to repeat their tasks. The rhythm is steady, strict yet reassuring, shaping them like water-shaped stone. Stay with me, because noble boys attended the Calmacac, the house of lineage. Here, teachings were deeper, preparing them for leadership, priesthood, or governance. Within quiet halls, they learned to read and recite sacred hymns, to interpret the calendar, to understand rituals. Teachers guided them in history, law, and oratory, ensuring they could speak with clarity, judge with fairness, and lead with wisdom. The discipline was strict. Mistakes would mean penance, fasting, or extra labor, but always the aim was balance, a life aligned with duty and devotion. And here is another revelation. Girls, too, were educated. They did not attend the same schools as boys, but their learning was no less important. Mothers and elder women taught them weaving, cooking, and managing households, but also songs, prayers, and rituals. Some noble girls trained as priestesses, serving in temples, learning chants and ceremonies. Education was a path to responsibility, whether within family, temple, or community. The hearth was as vital as the battlefield. and girls carried knowledge that kept the hearth steady. Imagine, now a day in the life of a student at the Kalmakak. Dawn bells echo across the city, calling the youths to rise. They wash in cool water, cleanse their faces, and gather in the courtyard. Teachers lead them in hymns, voices rising into morning light. Lessons follow. History spoken as story, mathematics woven into calendar reckoning, astronomy taught beneath the stars at night. In the afternoon, they practice discipline, carrying loads, sweeping courtyards, fasting in preparation for future priestly tasks. At dusk, they eat simple meals, tortillas, beans, perhaps a little amaranth, and then rest, their dreams filled with visions of stars and gods. Stay with me, because discipline was not harshness but structure. The Mexica believed that without guidance, a child could grow wild, like a plant untended. Education was a gentle pruning, the steady watering, the careful shaping of a life. Teachers spoke sternly at times, but their words carried love, for every child was a thread in the great tapestry. Isn't it soothing to imagine such steady care shaping the future? Each lesson a stitch in the fabric of community? Let's lower the lamp in our minds and imagine evening in a household. A father tells his son stories of ancestors, their deeds in battle, their wisdom in counsel. A mother hums songs as she weaves, her daughter beside her, learning by watching, by listening. The hearth glows softly, maize cooking on the griddle. Outside, the stars appear, the city hums gently. Inside, children feel safe, guided, loved. Education is not only in schools, but in every gesture, every story, every shared moment of daily life. And here's the reassurance. The Aztec Empire was not sustained by power alone, but by teaching, by patient instruction passed from one generation to the next. Children were shaped not only into warriors or priests, but into respectful, responsible members of community. The greatest lesson was balance between work and rest, duty and joy, reverence and daily care. Isn't it calming to imagine a society where learning was shared by all, where every child was guided with purpose? Picture yourself now in a Kalmakak courtyard at night. The torches glow, casting long shadows. Students sit cross-legged, listening to a teacher chant an ancient hymn, the words slow, resonant, soothing. The stars above shine clear, the lake reflects their light. The air is cool, the mood reverent, safe. You feel yourself among them, learning quietly, breathing with the rhythm of chants, surrounded by community, guided by wisdom. Stay close, because in Chapter 16 we will leave schools and enter the sacred spaces of the temples themselves, where priests carried knowledge from books of bark and skin, where rituals unfolded by torchlight, and where time itself was measured by stone and song. If education nurtured young minds, temples held the memory of generations, keeping the wisdom of cosmos alive. Together, they remind us that learning never ends, but flows like a river from home to school to temple, steady as breath. Stay close with me, because in this chapter we will climb softly into the temples, those spaces that shimmered at the heart of Aztec life. If schools shaped the young, temples guarded the wisdom of ages. Their walls held not only stone but memory, ritual, and devotion. To walk into a temple precinct was not to leave ordinary life behind, but to see it reflected, magnified, made sacred. Every step upon those stones echoed with prayers whispered for generations. Picture the great ceremonial center of Tenochtitlán at dawn. Mist rises from Lake Texcoco, drifting over canals. In the plaza, wide and still, torchlight flickers against high walls. At the center stands a Templo Mayor, its twin stairways climbing upward, one painted in red for Huitzilopochtli, god of the sun and war, the other in blue for Tlaloc, god of rain and fertility. The steps are steep, the structure massive, yet the mood is not overwhelming. It is calm, steady, a mountain in stone, a bridge between earth and sky. Stay with me, because the temple was more than stone. Within its chambers, priests tended sacred fires, guarded ritual objects, and read from painted codices. These books, made from bark paper or deerskin, folded like accordions, their pages alive with bright glyphs and images. They recorded the movement of stars, the cycles of the calendar, the myths of gods. To hold such a codex was to hold memory itself, painted patiently by scribes, preserved through generations. Imagine sitting in a quiet chamber, torchlight flickering across the pages, colors glowing softly, words flowing like whispers from the past. And here is a gentle twist. Temples were not closed to common people. The great ceremonies unfolded in plazas where everyone gathered: dancers, merchants, farmers, children. Priests led the rituals, but the people were present, offering flowers, incense, songs. The temple was not a place of distance but connection, where the divine was shared, where the boundaries between gods and humans softened. Isn't it soothing to think of sacred space not as something far away, but as something woven into daily life? Open and inclusive? Let's pause and imagine the role of the priests. Their lives were devoted to discipline, to knowledge, to serving as bridges between worlds. They rose before dawn, bathed in cold water, and kept themselves pure through fasting and prayer. They memorized hymns, chants, and stories, carrying them not in written words, but in living voices. They studied the stars, reading the skies for signs of planting, harvest, and ritual timing. They cared for temples, sweeping floors, feeding fires, tending altars. Their lives were steady, humble, and reverent, shaped by rhythm and devotion. Stay with me, because not all priests served the same way. Some were astronomers, watching the heavens from high platforms, noting the rising of Venus, the turn of the seasons. Some were healers, using herbs, prayers, and rituals to restore balance. Some were singers and drummers, leading ceremonies with music that rose into the air like breath. Each one carried a piece of sacred responsibility, together forming a chorus of devotion. And here is another revelation. Temples were not only for gods, but for people. Within their precincts stood calm courtyards, shrines, and schools. Children of priests studied there, learning songs, learning how to prepare offerings. Merchants offered goods before journeys. Farmers prayed for rain, mothers for safe births, elders for health. The temple was a place of asking and of thanking, of trusting and of releasing. It was not fear that filled its walls, but a deep, quiet respect of forces that sustain life. Imagine now a festival at the Templo Mayor. The plaza is filled with people, their cloaks bright, their voices low with anticipation. Musicians play drums, their rhythm steady, hypnotic. Dancers move in circles, feathers glinting in sunlight, shells rattling softly on ankles. Priests climb the stairways, carrying bowls of incense, their smoke curling into the sky. Flowers are scattered across the steps, their petals glowing against stone. The air is full of sound and scent, yet all of it moves together, flowing like water, calm and ordered. The temple watches over it all, a steady mountain in the midst of the city. Stay with me, because the temples also carried time itself. Their walls align with the sun at solstices, their steps measure with shadows, their stones carved with calendars. To walk around them was to feel the cycles of days, months, and years turning steadily. Priests read the Tanapwali, the 260-day sacred calendar, and the Zayapawali, the 365-day solar calendar, weaving them together in cycles of meaning. The temple was not only a place of prayer, but a clock of the cosmos, a steady reminder that life flowed in rhythm, never rushed, never still. Let's lower the lamp in our minds and picture a night within the temple precinct. Torches flicker against stone walls. The stars wheel above. The lake reflects their light. Priests chant softly, their voices rising and falling like waves. Incense smoke drifts slowly, carrying prayers upward. The city around is quiet, its people sleeping, but within the temple the rhythm continues, steady, eternal. You stand at the edge of the plaza, watching, breathing, feeling yourself part of the cycle, safe and included beneath stars and stone. And here is a reassurance. The temples remind us that sacredness is not separate from life, but woven into it, steady as breath, glowing as fire. Knowledge is not only in books, but in voices, in rituals, in the turning of stars overhead. Isn't it calming to imagine wisdom not as something hidden, but as something shared in plazas, sung in chants, painted on codices, offered freely to the rhythm of community? Picture yourself now inside a small temple chamber. The walls are painted with soft colors, glyphs curling like vines. A codex rests on a mat, its pages folded open, glowing in torchlight. A priest kneels nearby, chanting softly, his voice low, soothing. The air smells of incense and earth, the atmosphere calm, timeless. You sit quietly, listening, watching the pages shimmer. The world outside falls away, and you are wrapped in the stillness of memory, of ritual, of sacred song. Stay close, because in chapter 17 we will move from the stone of temples to the breath of music and the hum of poetry. If temples held wisdom in walls and codices, then music carried on air. Poetry gave it life in words, and dance traced upon the earth. Together, they remind us that knowledge is not only something we keep, but something we sing, something we move, something we breathe. Stay close with me, because in this chapter we will listen, not only with ears, but with the whole body. If temples held memory in stone and codices preserved wisdom in paint, then music, poetry, and dance carried on air through rhythm and breath. For the Mexica, these were not arts to be set apart, but living expressions woven into daily life, into festivals, into devotion. The world itself was a song, and the people learned to echo it. Picture dawn in Tenochtitlan. The mist drifts across canals, and from the temple precinct comes the deep beat of drums. The huehuetl, a great upright drum made of hollow tree trunk and stretched skin, sounds with a resonance that seems to echo through the lake itself. Each strike is steady, slow, like a heartbeat. Alongside it, the lighter tones of the teponazli, a horizontal slit drum, answer in rhythm, producing wooden, melodic notes. These two voices together, deep and high, form the pulse of ceremonies. Isn't it calming to imagine such sounds rising with the morning sun, steady as breath, soft as memory? Stay with me, because instruments filled the city with texture. Flutes made of bone, or reed trilled like birds. Rattles of clay or gourds shook gently, imitating rain. Shell trumpets called across plazas, their voices low and drawn out, like wind in a canyon. Each instrument was not only music but symbol, a reminder of natural forces. The bird, the storm, the river. To play them was not simply to entertain, but to call forth the essence of the world. And here is a gentle twist. Poetry was considered a noble and sacred art. Poets, often nobles or priests, composed verses called flower songs, metaphors woven with blossoms, birds, and stars. They spoke of the brevity of life, the beauty of friendship, the mystery of the divine. A poem might say that life is only a dream, that we bloom like flowers and fade, but in blooming we bring beauty. These poems were recited aloud, accompanied by music, creating a living tapestry of sound and thought. Isn't it soothing to think of poetry not as written words on a page, but as shared voices in a courtyard at dusk? Let's pause and imagine such a scene. A noble's garden in the evening, lanterns glowing, flowers releasing their fragrance. Musicians sit with drums and flutes, their rhythms gentle. A poet rises, his cloak embroidered with blossoms, his voice calm. He begins to recite. Life is fleeting, but beauty endures in song, in friendship, in memory. The listeners sit quietly, their eyes half closed, letting the words wash over them like water. The rhythm is not rushed but flowing, the mood tranquil, contemplative. Stay with me, because dance was not separate from music and poetry. It was their physical form, the body echoing the rhythm, tracing patterns upon earth and plaza. Dancers moved in circles, their steps steady, their arms rising and falling like waves. Shells tied to their ankles rattled softly, like rainfall marking each movement. Feathers shimmered, cloaks swayed, faces glowed in firelight. Dance was prayer in motion, a meditation carried by feet and hands. And here is another revelation. Music and poetry were considered gifts from the gods. The gods Acapilli, Prince of Flowers, embodied song, dance, and joy. To sing was to honor him. To dance was to step into his presence. Music was not only sound but offering, not only entertainment but devotion. Each note, each step, each word was a flower laid before the divine. Isn't it calming to imagine every song as a gift, every dance as a blossom offered in gratitude? Imagine now a great festival in the plaza. Thousands gather, the air alive with drums, flutes, and rattles. Dancers in brilliant feathers move in harmony, their shells creating a rain-like rhythm. Poets recite verses between the music, their words rising like birds into the air. The crowd sways, claps softly, hums along. The plaza itself seems to breathe. Each person a note, each step a beat. The whole city transformed into one great song. The feeling is not frenzy, but flow. Steady, steady, like a river carrying all along its current. Stay with me, because music and poetry also shape daily life. Mothers sang lullabies as they rocked their children, soft melodies about flowers and dreams. Farmers sang as they worked the fields, their voices blending with wind and birds. Fishermen hummed as they cast nets, the rhythm of their songs matching the rhythm of water. Music was not confined to temples or festivals. It was woven into every corner, every task, every breath of existence. And here's a reassurance. Through music and poetry, the Mexica embraced the fragility of life with gentleness. They knew that existence was brief, that flowers fade and stars fall, but they chose to respond with song, with dance, with laughter shared. Their art was not an escape from mortality, but a soft acceptance of it, a way of finding beauty in each fleeting moment. Isn't it calming to imagine responding to life's uncertainty not with fear, but with music, with poetry, with dance? Let's lower the lamp in our minds and drift into a night ceremony of song. The plaza glows with torches, the air cool. Musicians sit cross-legged, drums between their knees, flutes at their lips. The sound is low, resonant, hypnotic. Poets rise one by one, reciting verses of flowers, of stars, of friendship. Dancers sway in the torchlight, their feathers glowing, their steps slow, measured. The night is filled not with silence, but with a steady hum, a lullaby for the city, a heartbeat for the world. You sit among them, your own breath joining the rhythm, your own heart calmed by their song. Picture yourself now lying back on the soft grass beside a canal. The music drifts across the water, mingling with the scent of blossoms, the glow of stars. The voices of poets reach you faintly, words about flowers blooming in darkness, about friendship enduring like stone. You close your eyes, the rhythm of drums steady, the cool air wrapping you like a blanket. In that moment, you are part of the song, safe, soothed, and carried gently into rest. Stay close, because in Chapter 18, we will move from the breath of music to the warmth of the hearth and the structure of families, the quiet patterns of kinship and care that held the empire together. If music gave beauty to the world, family gave it foundation, grounding each life in belonging and love and continuity. Together, they remind us that beauty is not only something we create, but something we live every day, in song and in home. Stay close with me, because in this chapter we will step away from plazas filled with music and enter the quieter courtyards of Aztec homes. Here, among hearts glowing softly, children laughing gently, and families sharing food, we discover the foundation of the empire. Not battles or temples, but kinship, tenderness, and the steady patterns of domestic life. If music was the voice of the world, family was its heartbeat, soft and steady, carrying each life from birth to old age. Picture a simple home in Tenochtitlan. Walls of adobe or stone, a thatched or flat roof, a small courtyard open to the sky. In the center of the courtyard, a hearth smolders, clay como resting on stones. A mother kneels there, patting tortillas into shape, laying them onto the hot surface. The scent of maize fills the air, warm and sweet. Children play nearby, tossing little balls, chasing each other, their laughter drifting like birdsong. A father returns from the market, carrying fish or chilies, setting them down with a smile. The home is humble, yet it glows with safety and belonging. Stay with me, because Aztec society was built upon households known as calpuli, neighborhood groups that shared land, labor, and rituals. Families lived side by side, supporting each other in planting fields, repairing canals, preparing for festivals. Each household belonged to a larger whole, a web of kinship that provided strength, resilience, and identity. A child did not grow in isolation, but among cousins, aunts, uncles, and neighbors who all had a hand in guiding their path. Isn't it calming to imagine such togetherness, where every face around you is familiar, every voice supportive? And here is a gentle twist. Within homes, roles were distinct but balanced. Fathers carried the weight of providing, farming, fishing, trading. Mothers held the heart of the household, weaving, cooking, nurturing children. Yet their work was complementary, each one essential, each one honored. Women's labor at the hearth was seen as equally sacred as men's labor in the fields or markets. To grind maize on a matate, to weave cloth on a backstrap loom, was not only domestic duty but cosmic participation, echoing the gods who first gave maize to humanity. Let's pause and imagine a morning ritual. A mother wakes before dawn, lights the hearth, and whispers a prayer to Tenochtitlán, goddess of the hearth fire, asking her to keep the family safe. She grinds maize slowly, the stone making a soft, rhythmic sound. Her daughter wakes and joins her, learning by watching, by repeating. Together they form the dough, pat it into tortillas, cook them on the comal. The smell fills the courtyard. The family gathers, hands reaching for warm food, voices murmuring thanks. The day begins not with haste, but with rhythm, with gratitude, with quiet care. Stay with me, because children were cherished, yet gently guided with discipline. Parents reminded them of humility, respect, and responsibility. A boy might be told stories of ancestors who showed courage. A girl stories of women who kept households strong. If a child misbehaved, correction came not with anger, but with steady reminders, sometimes with symbolic lessons, like being told to breathe smoke from chili peppers, not a harm, but to impress the weight of respect. These lessons were not cruelty, but guidance, helping children grow into thoughtful, balanced adults. And here's another revelation. Marriage was a deeply important bond, arranged not casually but with ritual. Families consulted matchmakers, seeking harmony between households. When two were joined, ceremonies filled with song, offerings and blessings unfolded. The bride and groom shared a cloak, symbolizing unity. Their hearth fire was lit anew, marking the beginning of shared life. From that moment forward, they were partners, weaving together daily labor, raising children, and carrying household responsibilities. Marriage was not only love but duty, not only union but anchor. Imagine now the flow of an ordinary day in an Aztec home. Morning begins with grinding maize, preparing food. Men leave for fields, canals, or workshops. Women spin cotton, weave cloth, tend children. At midday, the family gathers for tortillas, beans, perhaps squash or chilies. In the afternoon, children fetch water from canals. Elders share stories in the courtyard. Neighbors stop by to exchange goods. Evening falls. The hearth glows again. Food is shared. Songs are sung. Night blankets the city. Families rest close together on reed mats. The rhythm of breath steady. The safety of kinship surrounding them. Stay with me, because kinship extended beyond blood. Elders played vital roles as teachers and keepers of memory. Grandmothers told stories of migrations, of gods, of how maize first came to people. Grandfathers recited lineages, spoke of honorable conduct, reminded youths of their place in a great order. Respect for elders was deeply woven into family life. To listen to their words was to receive wisdom. To honor them was to honor time itself. Isn't it soothing to imagine sitting by a hearth at night, listening to a grandmother's voice, her stories rising with the smoke, comforting and steady? And here's a reassurance. Within family life, every person had a place, a role, a value. Children brought joy. Parents provided and nurtured. Elders guided. No one stood outside the circle. Even in times of hardship, famine, or loss, the household remained a refuge, a hearth that gave warmth. This web of kinship was a quiet strength of the empire, less visible than temples or palaces, but more enduring because it lived in every home, in every courtyard, in every meal shared. Let's lower the lamp in our minds and imagine evening in a Kalpuli. Dozens of homes glow with firelight. The smell of maize and beans drifts through the air. Families gather, laughter rises, songs mingle softly. In one home, a father teaches his son how to mend a fishing net. In another, a mother shows her daughter how to weave a bright cloak. Children run between courtyards. Elders sit beneath the stars, voices telling stories. The night hums with peace, with belonging, with love. You are there among them, warmed by hearts, calmed by voices, included in their circle. Picture yourself now resting on a reed mat inside a small home. The walls are simple, the roof low, but the space is filled with warmth. A clay lamp flickers, shadows dancing on adobe. Beside you, family members breathe steadily, asleep. Outside, The water of the canal laps softly. Night birds call. You feel the safety of walls, the comfort of kinship, the steadiness of rhythm. You are held by the hearth, by the family, by the gentle hum of life itself. Stay close, because in Chapter 19 we will step from the hearth to the bustling energy of markets, the great gatherings of merchants and neighbors where voices mingled, good exchanged hands, and the city pulsed with trade. If family life gave safety, the market gave connection, weaving households into the larger fabric of the empire. Together, they remind us that life was not only about home, but about community, not only about hearth, but about plaza. Stay with me, because in this chapter we leave the quiet courtyards of homes and step into wide, colorful plazas of the markets. These were not chaotic spaces of noise and clamor, as one might expect, but carefully ordered, richly textured gatherings that pulse like the steady heartbeat of the empire. The market was where families met community, where goods from faraway lands arrived, and where life's essentials were exchanged with calm deliberation. If the hearth fed the body at home, the market nourished the body of the city itself. Picture the great market of Tlatelolco, the twin city of Tenochtitlan. On a bright morning, the plaza stretches vast and open, larger than many of the temples themselves. At dawn, traders arrive, laying out their goods on woven mats, baskets of maize, beans, squash, chilies, fruits bright as jewels. Others arrange fish still glistening from the lake, or bundles of firewood, or pots and pans of clay. Beyond them, artisans display cloaks woven with intricate patterns, obsidian blades polished to shine, bright feathers arranged in fans. The plaza fills steadily, not with confusion, but with rhythm, as each trade finds its place, each mat its order. Stay close, because the Mexica loves structure. The market was not random, but arranged by goods. Food in one section, pottery in another, textiles in another still. Officials walked through, watch and keep fairness, ensuring no false weights or dishonest measures. Judges sat at the edges, ready to settle disputes. There was no shouting, no frenzy, only a calm hum, a murmur of voices bartering softly, laughter from friends meeting, children weaving between stalls. Isn't it soothing to imagine such a marketplace? Not a storm of noise, but a carefully balanced river of exchange? And here is a gentle twist. The market was not only about buying and selling. It was a gathering place, a living pulse of society. News traveled to the plaza, gossip carried on laughter, stories shared between neighbors. A man from faraway lands might bring tales of deserts or mountains. A woman might share recipes for new herbs or dyes. The market was a school of life, where every person from farmer to noble came to learn, to listen, to connect. Let's pause and imagine a morning within the market. The air is cool. The smell of roasted cacao mingles with the scent of flowers, fish, and fresh tortillas. A woman spreads out painted gourds, their surfaces glowing with red and black designs. A young man arranges obsidian knives, their edges sharp, their surfaces gleaming. Children wander with small baskets, trading salt or chilies for fruit. Priests pass quietly, purchasing incense for rituals. Nobles walk with servants, selecting fine cloaks or rare feathers. Every class, every role, every life intersects here in harmony under the open sky. Stay with me, because the Aztecs used cacao beans as money. Imagine running your fingers through a pouch of smooth, dry beans, each one a measure of value. With a handful, you could buy a small fish. With more, you could trade for a cloak. Larger goods were valued in measures of cloth or in bartering agreements. This system gave trade a tactile intimacy, currency that was not cold metal but the seeds of tree, fragrant and warm, echoing the living world. Isn't it common to think of wealth measured not by glitter, but by something simple, natural, and sustaining? And here's another revelation. Markets connected the empire across vast distances. Merchants known as Paktika traveled great journeys, carrying goods from valleys, coasts, and mountains. They brought cotton from the hot lowlands, turquoise from the north, cacao from the tropics, quetzal feathers from far forests. Their caravans moved slowly, steadily, their loads balanced on backs, their paths marked by trust and tradition. When they returned, they brought not only goods but knowledge, news of distant lands, customs of other peoples. The market was not only local but global, linking the Mexica to the wider world. Imagine now the soundscape of the market. Not loud shouts, but a soft hum of bargaining. Voices rise and fall like gentle waves. A woman offers a basket of beans, her voice calm, measured. A man responds, adding chilies to balance the trade. Nearby, a flute player adds music to the air, his notes mingling with laughter and conversation. The sound is textured, layered, but never overwhelming. It is the sound of life in balance, of exchange flowing like water. Stay with me, because the market was also a place of beauty. Flowers were sold in abundance, bright marigolds, fragrant magnolias, delicate orchids. They were purchased not only for ceremonies but for households, to brighten courtyards, to honor guests. Feathers gleamed in the sun, woven into headdresses, arranged into fans, shining in blues, greens, and golds. Pottery displayed smooth curves, painted designs, each piece a small work of art. To walk to the market was not only to buy, but to feast the senses, to bathe in color, scent, and sound. And here's the reassurance. Even in such a large and lively gathering, there was safety. The market was overseen by officials. Fairness upheld, peace maintained. Disputes were settled gently. Punishments rare but respected. The order was so trusted that neighboring peoples marveled at it, saying that no market elsewhere was so vast, so calm, so fair. Isn't it soothing to imagine thousands of people gathered, yet moving with harmony, with respect, with ease? Let's lower the lamp in our minds and picture the market at dusk. The sun sinks. Shadows stretch across the plaza. Merchants pack their goods, rolling mats, tying bundles. The air cools. The hum quiets, leaving behind only the soft murmur of closing exchanges. Families walk home along canals, carrying baskets filled with food, cloth, or flowers. The plaza empties, yet the sense of connection lingers. The market has done its work, nourishing not only bodies but bonds. Picture yourself now walking through the market slowly, as if in a dream. You pause to smell flowers, to taste a roasted cacao drink, to touch the smooth weave of a cloak. You listen to the calm hum of voices, the steady beat of a drum somewhere in the distance. The air is warm, the plaza glowing with torches. You feel yourself not as a visitor but as part of the crowd, included, safe, content. The rhythm of the market is steady, like breath, carrying you forward gently, softly. Stay close, because in Chapter 20, we will leave the marketplace and journey to the great roads and canals that bound the empire together. If markets were the heart, then roads and waterways were the veins, carrying goods, people, and stories across valleys and mountains. Together, they remind us that life is not only about gathering in one place, but about the steady flow between places, the gentle movement that keeps all alive. Stay close with me, because in this chapter we step away from the markets and follow the paths that made them possible. Roads and canals, the threads that wove the Aztec Empire together, were not only practical structures but lifelines, veins of stone and water that carry goods, people, and stories across valleys, mountains, and lakes. If markets were the heart, then roads and waterways were the circulation, steady and constant, never hurried, never still. Picture Tenochtitlán from above, rising out of the waters of Lake Texcoco, like a shimmering vision. The city does not float alone. 3 great causeways stretch outward, straight and solid, connecting the island to the mainland. Each is wide enough for many people to walk side by side, lined with stone, strengthened by wooden pilings. At intervals, bridges can be raised, allowing canoes to pass beneath. Imagine walking one of those causeways at dawn, the lake mist curling around you, the city glowing softly ahead. The water laps gently at the edges. Birds call. Traders move steadily with baskets balanced on backs. The causeway hums with life, steady and serene. Stay with me, because these roads did not stop at the water's edge. Beyond the lake, they extended across valleys, winding through mountains, threading forests, reaching coasts. The Mexica and their neighbors maintained a network of roads that connected towns, villages, and farmlands. Some were simple dirt paths, others lined with stone, but all were steady, clear, and purposeful. Along them moved farmers carrying produce, merchants bearing goods, messengers running swiftly with news. To walk these roads was to feel the pulse of empire beneath your feet. And here's a gentle twist. The Aztec world was also a world of water. Canoes glided across canals and lakes like silent birds. In Tenochtitlan itself, canals crisscross the city, turning it into a kind of Venice of the New World. Imagine riding in a canoe through narrow waterways, the water reflecting sky and rooftops, flowers trailing from gardens. Merchants paddled slowly, their boats filled with maize or fish or flowers. Families used canoes as casually as we might use a footpath, their paddles dipping softly, their voices carrying across the water. Isn't it common to picture a city where daily errands happen not on crowded streets, but on quiet canals, the water itself carrying you gently where you needed to go? Let's pause and imagine the roads at night. Torches flicker along the causeways, their light reflecting on the water. A caravan of traders moves steadily, their shadows long against the stones. Somewhere far in the distance, the lights of villages glow faintly. The road is not empty but alive with quiet movement, with footsteps, with the whisper of cloth and the murmur of voices. Each journey carries connection, each step reminding the traveler of the web that links every community to every other. Stay with me, because the empire also relied on runners, swift messengers who carried news along the roads. They worked in relays, one sprinting a short distance, then passing messages to the next. In this way, news could travel hundreds of miles in a matter of days. Imagine standing by a road at dawn, watching a runner approach, his breath steady, his stride light. He carries a small bundle, perhaps a message in knots or symbols, perhaps words committed to memory. He passes it on, and the message flows onward, faster than the wind, faster than the sun across the sky. The roads were not only for goods but for knowledge, binding the empire with invisible threads of news and story. And here's another revelation. The roads and canals carried not only trade but ritual. Pilgrimages flowed along them. Families traveling to shrines, merchants stopping to give offerings at roadside altars, nobles journeying to festivals in distant towns. The movement itself was sacred, not only the destination. To walk upon a causeway, to paddle a canoe, was to participate in a cosmic rhythm, echoing the migrations of ancestors, echoing the paths of gods across sky and underworld. Imagine now the Chinampas, the floating gardens of Tenochtitlan, connected by narrow canals. Small rectangular plots of fertile soil rose above the water, held by reeds and willows, their surfaces bursting with maize, beans, squash, flowers. Farmers paddled between them, harvesting steadily, their boats filled with green abundance. The canals shimmered with reflection, dragonflies darted in sunlight, birds called from trees. Goods moved from garden to market by water, flowing as easily as rivers themselves. Isn't it soothing to picture such harmony, agriculture, transport, and beauty woven into one system, steady and graceful? Stay with me, because even the design of Tenochtitlan itself reflected order. Roads ran straight, dividing neighborhoods, guiding walkers to markets, temples, or causeways. Canals paralleled them, offering choice between land and water. Bridges arched gently, linking paths. The city was a map of connection, a weaving of earth and water into one. Walking through it was never confusing, always flowing, always leading you where you needed to go. And here's a reassurance. Movement in the Aztec world was not frantic, but rhythmic. Goods flowed, people traveled, but everything had its time, its pace, its order. The roads and canals were steady, not overwhelming. They carried the empire without rushing it, like breath carrying life through the body. Isn't it calming to imagine travel not as stress, but as gentle flow, each journey another stitch in the fabric of connection? Let's lower the lamp in our minds and picture a canoe at dusk. The sky glows pink and gold. The water mirrors the colors. A family sits together in the boat. The father paddling slowly, the mother holding a child, the boat filled with baskets of food. The city glimmers ahead, torches glowing, voices carrying softly across water. The paddle dips, lifts, dips again, steady and hypnotic. The movement lulls you, the rhythm soothes you, the water carries you gently home. Picture yourself now walking along a causeway at night. The stars reflect on the lake. The city rises ahead like a crown of light. Around you, others walk steadily, merchants with baskets, families with children, priests with incense. The air is cool, the stones firm beneath your feet. Each step brings you closer, the causeway guiding you like a ribbon of stone. You feel part of the flow, not alone, not hurried, but included in the great current of movement that binds the empire together. Stay close, because in Chapter 21 we will leave the physical roads and waterways to enter the invisible paths of time itself. The calendars, the rituals, and the cosmic cycles that ordered every movement, every planting, every song. If roads carried bodies and goods, calendars carried days and seasons, guiding the rhythm of life as surely as stone and water. Together, they remind us that connection is not only in space but in time, not only in movement but in memory. Stay close with me, because in this chapter we step onto a different kind of road, not of stone or water, but of days, seasons, and cycles. The Aztecs understood time not as a straight line stretching endlessly, but as a circle, a rhythm, a song that repeated with variations, like verses of a hymn. Their calendars, their rituals, and their observations of the heavens kept life aligned with this rhythm. To live well was to walk in step with time, not to resist it, not to race it, but to flow with it like breath. Picture the great plaza of Tenochtitlán at dawn. The sun rises over Lake Texcoco, its first rays touching the twin stairways of the Templo Mayor. Priests stand waiting, incense drifting, drums sounding low. The moment is not ordinary. It is the start of a new festival, carefully timed by the calendar. Every gesture, every chant, every flower scattered on the steps has its place in the cycle, echoing rituals performed for generations. The city itself breathes in rhythm with the heavens. Isn't it calming to imagine such order, where each day has meaning, each act its time? Stay with me, because the Aztecs used two main calendars, woven together like threads of a single cloth. The first was the Tenochtitlán, the sacred calendar of 260 days. It was divided into 20 periods of 13 days, each day carrying its own sign and number, like a personality, like a spirit. These signs, jaguar, reed, house, flint, and many more, guided destiny, shaped ceremonies, and reminded people the unseen patterns behind daily life. To be born under a certain sign was to carry its qualities, just as surely as one carries hair or eyes. And here is a gentle twist. The Tenochtitlán was not about predicting the future in fear, but about harmonizing with cycles. If your sign suggested strength, you might be guided toward leadership. If it suggested calm, you might find a place in healing or prayer. Priests trained in reading these signs were like gardeners, helping each person find the soil in which they would flourish. Isn't it soothing to imagine time itself as a guide, not a pressure, but a gentle hand shaping your path? The second calendar was the Aztec, the solar year of 365 days. It followed the rhythm of planting and harvest, rain and sun, work and rest. It was divided into 18 months of 20 days each, with 5 extra days at the end. These final days, called Nemontemi, were seen as unstable, a time to rest, to reflect, to avoid rushing or beginning new ventures. Time itself breathed a little slower then, allowing space for stillness. Imagine the comfort of a calendar that tells you not only when to act, but when to pause, when to honor quietness. Stay with me, because these two calendars did not exist separately. They turned together like gears, completing a shared cycle every 52 years. This was called the calendar round, a sacred bundle of time. When one round ended, the Aztecs performed a new fire ceremony, extinguishing all fires in the city and relighting them from a single flame atop a sacred hill. In that moment, the entire world felt renewed, reborn, safe to continue. Can you picture the calm of thousands of hearts, all waiting, all dark, then one by one glowing again as the flames spread across the valley? The reassurance of new beginnings, the comfort of light returning. And here is another revelation. The stars and planets guided time as much as the sun. Priests watched the movements of Venus carefully, its bright rising and setting marking sacred intervals. They noted solstices and equinoxes, the tilt of shadows, the position of constellations. The heavens were not far away, but intimately connected to fields, harvests, and rituals. To watch the sky was to listen to the breathing of the cosmos itself. Imagine now a night on the roof of a Kalmakak, the school for noble youth. Students sit quietly with their teacher, watching the stars. The lake reflects their glow, The city hums softly below. The teacher points to Venus, bright and steady, explaining how its cycle marks days of significance. The students listen, eyes wide, breaths calm. The night is not silent, but full of whispered knowledge, of stars telling stories. Isn't it soothing to think of learning beneath the sky, each lesson not written but glowing above, eternal and steady? Stay with me, because rituals mark the passage of time. Each month carried its festival, each one honoring different gods with dances, songs, offerings. Families prepared for them steadily, weaving garlands, grinding maize, crafting figurines. Children watched eagerly, learning through participation. Time was not abstract but embodied, felt in food, flowers, music, and fire. The year unfolded like a series of celebrations, reminding people that life was not only work but joy, not only duty but beauty. And here's the reassurance. Within this cycle, no moment was meaningless. Every day carried a sign, every season's purpose. Even endings were beginnings. The passing of one festival promised the arrival of another. The close of one year flowed into the opening of the next. The Aztec sense of time was not anxious, but steady, accepting the rhythm of change. Isn't it calming to imagine life where time itself holds you gently, reminding you that each day is part of a larger pattern, never lost, never wasted? Let's lower the lamp in our minds and picture the new fire ceremony more closely. The city grows dark, every hearth extinguished. Families sit together, wrapped in cloaks, gazing toward the sacred hill. Priests climb slowly, carrying wood, carrying hope. They wait until the stars align, until the moment is right. Then fire is lit, flames rising into night. A cheer rises, not loud but relieved, joyous. From that single flame, runners carry torches back to the city, relighting each home, each temple, each courtyard. The darkness fades, warmth returns, the cycle continues. You watch from a quiet rooftop, heart steady, reassured that light always returns. Picture yourself now in a small household during one of the festivals. The family prepares tamales, steams them over the hearth. Flowers are placed on doorways, incense burns softly. Children laugh, adults sing, the courtyard glows with lanterns. The festival is not distant but close, part of family life, part of community rhythm. You sit among them, safe, included, your hands warm from food, your heart calm from song. Time does not rush here. It flows gently, carrying you like a river. Stay close, because in chapter 22 we will move from time itself into the soft closing of this journey, the fading of the empire and the enduring warmth of its memory. If roads carry goods and calendars carry days, memory carries everything that remains, keeping the Aztec world alive in whispers, in stories, in dreams. Together, they remind us that nothing is truly lost if it is remembered softly, gently, like we are remembering it tonight. Stay close with me, because in this final chapter we will drift together into twilight, the fading of the Aztec Empire, the transformations that followed, and the enduring warmth of its memory. We will not dwell on battles or conquests in harsh detail, for that is not our purpose. Instead, we will move gently, like a canoe gliding into evening light, exploring how a world can change yet still live on in stories, in traditions, in quiet echoes carried forward. This is not an ending, but a soft continuation, a handoff from past to present, and then into dreams. Picture the empire at its height. Cities alive with markets, temples glowing in dawn light, music and poetry drifting through plazas, families gathered around hearths. Life flows steadily, each day marked by calendars, each season honored with ritual. But time, as the Aztecs knew well, always moves in cycles. Just as flowers bloom and fade, so too do empires rise and soften. The Mexican never believed they lived outside of this rhythm. They saw themselves as part of it, woven into the eternal fabric. Steady, inevitable, serene. Stay with me, because even in times of change, beauty endured. When new peoples arrived from across the ocean, when conflict reshaped cities, the essence of the Mexica did not vanish. Their songs, their foods, their patterns of family and kinship, their sense of time as a circle, all these continue quietly, sometimes hidden, sometimes transformed, but never extinguished. Like embers beneath ashes, they glowed softly, waiting to be remembered. Isn't it calming to know that memory itself can carry warmth, even when structures fall? And here is a gentle twist. What we call the end of the Aztec Empire was not the end of the people. The Mexica survived, their descendants living on in villages, in markets, in weaving, in farming, in storytelling. The empire as a political power faded, but the culture did not vanish into silence. Instead, it shifted into new forms, mixing with others, adapting, carrying old rhythms into new songs. When you eat maize tortillas, when you see marigolds glowing in autumn festivals, when you hear flutes echoing the hills, you are brushing against their enduring presence. Let's pause and imagine a family in the years after conquest. The city has changed. Church bells now ring where drums once sounded, but in the courtyard of a home, the hearth fire still burns. A mother pats tortillas, her daughter learning by her side. A father mends nets, a grandfather tells old stories in hushed tones. Children laugh, flowers bloom, stars shine overhead. The world outside shifts, but within the circle of kinship, continuity flows. The family holds memory, gently like a song hummed at night. Stay with me, because memory was carried not only in stories but in earth itself. The canals of Tenochtitlán, though filled in over centuries, still leave traces beneath the modern city. The stones of the Templo Mayor, buried and then rediscovered, still whisper of ceremonies held beneath stars. Codices painted by careful hands, though hidden or scattered, survive to tell their colors and signs. The past is not gone. It rests beneath the surface, like roots beneath soil, steady and nourishing. Isn't it soothing to imagine walking a modern street and knowing that beneath your feet lies the soft hum of ancient footsteps? And here's a reassurance. Remembering does not require grand gestures. It happens in small moments, in quiet acts. A flower placed on an altar, a song sung to child, a recipe passed from grandmother to granddaughter. These are the ways memory flows, not loudly but steadily, like water beneath reeds. The Aztec world lingers in such gestures, alive in the intimate and ordinary. Imagine now twilight settling over Lake Texcoco. The sun sinks, the sky glows pink and gold, the water reflects every hue. Canoes glide slowly home, paddles dipping with rhythm. The city hums softly, torches flicker, voices murmur. Above, Venus shines bright, steady in the darkening sky. This is not an empire falling. It is an evening arriving. The day has been full. The night promises rest. The rhythm continues. Stay with me, because in many ways we're still sitting by the hearth of the Mexica tonight. Their view of time as a cycle comforts us. Their devotion to family steadies us. Their songs, though faint, still soothe us. Their flowers still bloom each season. Their food still nourish countless tables. The empire may have passed into history, but the people's essence continues, warm and familiar. Isn't it calming to imagine them not as distant strangers, but as quiet companions across time? Their voices a gentle chorus joining ours? Let's lower the lamp in our minds and picture one last scene. You are seated on a reed mat in a courtyard, the hearth fire glowing. Around you are friends, family, neighbors. A storyteller speaks softly, his voice steady, recounting the migration of ancestors, the building of Tenochtitlan, the glories of its markets and temples. His words weave images in the air, flowers, feathers, drums, songs. You listen, your eyelids heavy, your breath steady. The fire crackles softly, the stars glimmer above. The story does not end. It flows into your dreams. Picture yourself now drifting along a canal at night. The water is calm, the moon reflects upon its surface. The city lies quiet, its torches glowing faintly. You lie back in a canoe, eyes half closed, hearing only the dip of the paddle, the soft call of night birds, the distant hum of voices. You feel safe, carried, wrapped in memory. The past and present blend, time itself flowing like water, steady, endless. You drift into rest, into dreams, into the gentle embrace of history. Stay close, because this story does not truly end here. Like the Mexica understood, time is a circle, and endings are only beginnings. As you rest tonight, know that the story will continue. In other chapters, in other nights, in other gentle voices. For now, allow yourself to release, to breathe, to sink into the calm. The Aztec Empire has been softly told. It will remain with you, in dreams and whispers, in quiet moments. And when you wake, it will be there still, waiting to be remembered.
you.